not really good at that. I don't have stuff yet. But in my
Because you all had asked me to do a few things when we were moving so fast, I had to go back and do them. So I want to make sure we're good.
Sounds good.
All right. So you have a quorum, and we are 5 minutes past. So
Do we want to start?
we can start. Adriana is the only one missing, and she actually said she couldn't make it tonight, so she has an excused absence for work. So I think we're good. So just give me a thumbs up, and I'll unmute us. We're already live. I just need to unmute us, and then. And remember to turn your mics on, when you're speaking. So.
Okay.
Good.
Yep.
All right. All right.
Are we all set?
I think we are set.
Okay.
Kick it off when you're live.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second subcommittee meeting of the Rules Committee. This is Monday, February 13th, and we are here at the CPC headquarters. Just going to do a quick roll call. So welcome to our guests if there are any streaming on YouTube. So Chandra, Commissioner Benito. Present. Commissioner Donaldson.
present.
Commissioner Ridgway. Present. I'm present, and Commissioner Rodriguez has a work conflict, so we'll be missing her, but we have a quorum. So welcome to everybody, and I just want to pass it over first to Interim Executive Director Goodrick to give us a summary of what we went over last time to catch everybody up.
All right, if everyone could bear with me, I have to talk through the mask because I do have a little bit of a cold here. And I apologize for the sun. Hopefully that will take care of itself here in the next 15 minutes or so, go down a little bit more. So going back over what we covered so far, we are in section 1 of the administrative rules of the draft that was distributed to commissioners at orientation for consideration. These rules would be considered your bylaws at the core of it, right? We talked a little bit about the interchangeability of that language, rules and bylaws. It's pretty much the same when we say that. So section 1 is titled Administrative Rules. One of the points of feedback we got was because there was a lot of direct language from the charter in the administrative rules, that saves you having to go back to the charter to reference it. What we did there was talk about how to distinguish that, and I double checked all the wording to make sure it is exactly from the charter. So what I did was recopy it in here verbatim from the charter, and then I marked in red the sections that are uneditable by us, right? So those are charter sections. In addition, they are in quotes. So if you see the quote mark, that is something that we cannot vote to change or edit because it is directly quoted from the charter. So that covers this when you see the red block here on the draft. And I did send, if you're interested in following along digitally, you have this in your email, a live link to this working draft. So you could see it. So I checked the charter language there, and then there were a few micro edits in wording that we made or that was suggested to be made. One of those was going back through, I found a piece of feedback that someone had pointed out, that here all of the rules can't be applicable. Instead, he wanted to just say rules because we can't contain all of the rules in this manual, so it didn't make sense. So that was an edit that was made, and that came back from the monitoring team when they took a look at this, and they didn't have that much feedback for the first section other than what we already established. That's to make sure we clearly delineate what is law and changeable and what is not, as well as a few word things. They pointed out the conflict between board and commission, which we changed a lot of that. We went through duties and responsibilities. So this is yellow because yellow indicates that we can edit this. And that was the ethical stuff here. Delante at the end of it had pointed out making sure that we mentioned state ethics law and City of Cleveland charter. On a reread, I found that it was in there. We just missed it. So it was already in there, and I highlighted it here. It is up here in conflicts of interest. It says commissioners are subject to both state ethics law, and I added in the exact revised code and the City of Cleveland charter, and I added in the exact charter section, which is 171.38, ethical conduct and conflict of interest. So, and then down here, we reiterated and we mentioned shall receive quality training on state ethics law, and that's what Delante is going to cover on Wednesday with us. So that's how I remediated that, because it was already in the top part. We just didn't cite it, so I cited it, and then we keep it down here as a responsibility of training. That was the part that we changed in that. One piece of feedback here that may not have been covered in the meeting, it might have been missed, but was pointed out by the monitoring team here, is we used the word possible when we went through this last week, as attend as many community-based meeting forums and other events as commissioner as possible. We got some feedback. What does possible mean, and is that too high a standard? So there was a suggestion to change it to reasonable. If you guys are okay with that, we could keep that, or we can revisit this particular part. But I think possible is after hearing that feedback, makes it really crazy. Yeah. Where reasonable means like, okay, well, what's reasonable? If I have to work, I can't attend, so reasonable is a better standard. It's utilized in most documents. So something to consider if we want to go back and revisit that.
Commissioner Ridgway.
So who determines what's reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
You guys do. So
this
yeah,
committee?
and yes, and so not the rules specifically, but when you get to the second part where there's accountability, the part we'll talk about tonight, where it talks about meetings, right, and then standards of attendance, that's where you can define what is reasonable, right, and how someone's, what their obligation is to tell you when they can't make a meeting, and what you all feel like if someone's serving on no committees, for example. Is that reasonable or not? So that's in the second part of section 1 that we haven't covered yet, where we get more into that. So here is another part where composition of the commission, it says commission under that red. It was composition of the board, but that's one of the things I went through. I searched the document. I eliminated all board except where it refers to community relations board or civilian complaint review board. Those are boards. We're a commission, so there was some confusing language there. I did a doc search and changed everywhere it says board to commission, so that we're not we have no more of that in this document. And then again, there's a note here: this cannot be edited or changed. And I went back, and even though it was summarized in the original bullet pointed, I put back the original lengthy language in there, so there's no conflict. Mm-hmm. So it has the original 115 language in here. Instead of separating it down and bullet pointing it out, I left it in its original format so that there's no confusion about the language. So these were just edits where it did not fit where the law had different wording, so those got changed back to what the wording says in the law. So here again, vacancies of the commission. This is exactly out of the charter. It's in quotes, and it's marked red so that we know. This part we did cover already, but I just made it yellow so that other commissioners know when you present this, that is a part that we reviewed and there was nothing in here that was changed, but it did have some ability for us to change because it is not the exact law. So if it's yellow, it does have, or not marked, it can be changed. Leadership, we did a lot of edit here in the last session. This is where the group decided to go above what the law said, and instead of having a single chair, the group opted to edit for a co-chair system. So these were edits that we all made at the last sit down of this committee last Monday, and I replaced co-chair everywhere that there said chair in the responsibilities. And then this section here, we said 1 year, co-chairs will be selected no later than February of each calendar year. So those were the edits. And then I believe this is where we came to a stop, was at subcommittees or around this area. We may have gone a little bit further down.
We went a
Yeah.
little further. Could you go up? I don't know if I was reading the live document. At the beginning of the co-chairs, there's a little bit of confusion. It says if there's one, should there be more than two? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, this was the language that we played with live. I
Right.
didn't go back and change anything here, so we can revisit this if you'd like this evening. But this is the one where we kept typing back and
Right.
made those changes. Yeah.
And regardless of how cumbersome this was, our intent is to provide for every scenario. Our desire is to have a co-chair model. So, but the description of that can be a little bit. Okay, so do we, so we got to the subcommittee because I remember talking about the 3 persons more than 5.
Right. Okay. You're right. We did get past there. And then the staff part, this is where we discussed you can't edit this. Again, it's right out of the language of staff, and the duties of the executive director is copied right out of 115, and it's in quotes. Removal of the executive director is right out of 115, and it's in quotes. Staffing level. This is the quoted part. Additional staffing shall be approved by the commission and subsequently city council. That is the process there. The reporting structure and day-to-day operations, I remember we did go through this. You're correct, and I apologize. This was editable, but there were no edits made other than changing board to commission, which we had discussed going through.
We made the change about we did make a change about having the whole
Majority of the.
majority.
Right?
Yeah.
Majority of the commission, right? If it's in red, it was a change.
Okay,
That's correct.
I did, before we move on, I don't know if we can do it later, since the discussion of we have committees that have to have 3, but no more than 5, and we have committees that already are over that 5. My concern is, how do we decide among the whole commission how to move those down back to 5, or is that something that we need to codify in the rules?
My suggestion would be that when during the meeting that we adopt these, that we just pick the committees. Basically, I think we can just say that those were temporary assignments pending this, and and then once people have the ability to pick other committees, I think some of that size will go down, and that would be my suggestion.
Do we have any concerns about if there's any conflicts or people that still, what would be the fairest way to choose if there's disordinate, interest in that committee still, which I imagine some of them, like I think the budget committee will have that. Because I don't know if random would be the fairest thing, and how long, what about the term of the committee? If we have a lot of interest and desire to serve on those subcommittees, do we limit? Jason, what has been the historical?
So
precedent?
historically, we haven't had a challenge to committee problems. I mean, in the past, it's been hard to get enough people on committees. So historically, the biggest challenge we had is a committee of 1. What do you do with that, right? So, but this group is new and eager to get to work. But I think they will weed themselves down a little bit when we have so many committees that, because we haven't even gotten into the police reform work yet. So the only thing that came up that is, these are mandatory because they're areas we cover. Do we need to break some of these down? So like police policy committee, if it got too heavy, then you could break it into sub-policy groups, for specific policy purposes like mental health response policy, right? So that's a way to break that down in the future into more precise committees for specific policies if it gets too heavy. And I think you may have to do that at some point. Yeah, but you can have, it wouldn't be harmful to come up with some language, because it's never been done before, where you've had a conflict of how do you select the committee members when you have more interest than there are seats on a committee. That's definitely something that the rules would help now. Having a rule on it now would maybe pay off later.
Yeah.
So worth considering, yes.
So maybe we can just provide some options. We want to brainstorm a little bit, so we're not doing it there in that full commission. Give them options. Are there any thoughts?
Just a question. Did we agree to separate, or was it just in discussion only, grants and budget last time?
I think we just discussed it. I don't think we came
didn't
to a
make
decision.
a decision on it.
Yeah, it was just a discussion.
Are we 1 over on that? We're at 7.
Yeah,
for
that's the heavier one, but from you guys asked me historically, nobody wants to be just budget. So
that? Mhm.
that's going to be the problem. That's been a committee of one as long as I can remember, because the budget becomes, in the beginning, it's exciting, but when it becomes turnkey, people just want to do other work and they don't want to put in time into the management of the budget and oversight of the budget itself.
Commissioner
So-
Benito?
What if we merge the budget and the rules committee, because both of them are kind of not necessarily super, they're a little more time intensive right now, but ongoing it might be a little bit lighter, and I think they kind of are getting around, operationally. But then I think what Jason's saying is that you're going to have a lot of people who want to be on the grants committee, period. So I'm not sure that's really solving anything. But to your earlier question, maybe if there's more people who want to be on it, then we just do a random number selector, put people on a spreadsheet. And
The other thing I thought about was if we went back and reviewed the selection, or whenever we were calling out the committees that we were interested in, and then the first 5 who said it, then just let them be it.
Mhm.
That's something I thought about as well.
except that we went around the table,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so then that would preference.
One way would be to diversify the thought on these committees would be that it would not be static. I think even less than a year, we can rotate people in. I don't know what is the reason. What is it? Do they usually serve for the entire term that they're?
No, they're very fluid. People leave committees and join committees. Like, I think you guys were a little more formal than we've ever been, where you voted to establish membership in a committee, by vote. That's not the norm. It's normally like by interest, and then working with the committee chair on an individual basis. Hey, do you have a spot? You need somebody, so that was way more formal than I've ever seen the commission do with committees.
I do want to mention, for that, I was actually interested in the budget on that part. Not that I'm disinterested in the grants. I'm on that committee. Do we need to watch out for any conflicts of interest on that grants commission, the committee? If there are people, right? So that might be a way to, and should we have people express their opinions on why they want to be on a committee? It's a little bit, or naturally we just need one less person, right? So,
and there has been in the past provisions in the bylaws of other organizations, and it might have been in ours at one point, where chairs appoint committees. Now, the problem with that is if it's just a chair, it can be very unfair if they have appointment and removal. And there's a lot of negatives to that. Co-chairs, having co-chairs have final say, also is problematic, but it is a practice on other boards where chairs do have appointment and removal authority over committees, right? But you'd have to define how that works and the fairness of that as well. But that is the only thing that I've seen in past and similar organizations where a chair or co-chairs have that power, the final say, and if there's a conflict over committee membership.
Right. I mean, I'm hoping if there is a conflict because that's the one. I mean, I'm sure there are other conflicts, but with the grant writing process, if somebody has a connection to the organization, we certainly want that. Do we need to put that in the rules, or is that something that the committee designates the rules, or
Don't we have a conflict of interest section on this in the
If so, it would
Rules
probably be with
already?
ethics, I don't know.
So that's in the ethics.
Ethics,
Yeah,
that's what
there
I'm
is.
thinking.
So conflict of interest, we're gonna get our mandatory training on that on Wednesday, so you'll be able to better define what that means. But it does, so for instance, a grants conflict of interest, would be if you set up, some violence. I think one of our things is, violence reduction in communities. That's one of our grant target areas under 115, right? If someone's working in that space every day, or they have their own organization, that might apply for that, it would be a conflict for them to be in the reviewing of that particular thing, right? Now, there's nuances to that, and that's where specific case by case, those people generally with conflict of interest, it has to be self-policed, and then if you need an opinion on that, you would go to the law department and say, hey, this is my specific situation. Do I have a conflict? And they would let you have definitively no. But it can be. With grants, it can be touchy because we have a lot of people who do a lot of work out on the streets with organizations that might be applying or have connections or have been on the boards of them. So that will all come up in our training, how you navigate stuff like that.
I have a question.
yes?
I was told that y'all need a lawyer. So have y'all discussed that part of
Not really.
business?
The question from Ms. Rice is that we have a lawyer that was part of the charter, and we do have plans to if you can go back to the budget meeting, there was, and also the general meeting, there is budget for an in-house attorney.
Okay.
So we're just trying to find the best, because there's going to be so many areas of law that are going to need coverage. And the lawyer that we're hiring in-house is on an advisory level, on a day-to-day basis level. It's not
Okay.
exactly the one. So yes, we are very,
Inquiring about one?
yes, we're inquiring. We have to formalize, right? When will the budget be
The
formalized?
first step is budget hearings are this week. We are scheduled to go on Thursday. We just got confirmation of that today. So once council approves that money, then we have to go through the hiring process. So it could be months before we have an actual attorney here,
Okay.
but we'll do it as quickly as possible. And to Ms. Rice's point, that would be another place where conflict of interest, questions could go, and help to make sure.
Instead of going to the county.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are well aware that, in the city, I think is well aware that, since they have lawyers that have to deal with defend the police, so there would be an obvious conflict of interest.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I think we're just, going to, Delon, hope that there's somebody that has a veil that they can, for, the time being, advise us. But I think everyone's advocating that we get independent counsel as soon as possible. So we will figure that out after the budget. Ms. Benito?
Yes, and my understanding is that there's enough flexibility in the budget that was put forward that we have a pot of funding where we can bring on somebody on a contract basis should something happen before we're able to, figure out the full staffing.
And I think the real thing is that we probably will need multiple attorneys. We have options that are pro bono in the community, people that have service on the commission. I think that it's safe to say that we would encourage ourselves to find, multiple legal opinions should that arise. Nothing has arisen so far, but that is definitely on our list of very urgent things to do. So thank you for bringing that up. Did you have another question?
One other question.
Mhm.
Is everybody supposed to be present here today, all 13 people? So are y'all like the initial committee members?
We're the member of, we're the Rules Commission,
Oh,
so
y'all the rules commission?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
it's a very,
So it's smaller than the one group,
Yeah.
okay.
They're a committee trying to make, the specific rules, like the bylaws to follow, like how
Right,
to,
of course,
yeah.
the articles and stuff, yeah.
which is quite important. So, we're a small committee, but we're, trying to set the foundation. But, so I think, but a lot of the things that we're gonna touch upon today, I think will be brought to the full commission.
So I wanted to know how many times can a person miss the meeting? And do you all, consider like the tardiness of the meetings, like
Mhm.
people showing up to the meeting? And with the police, Jimmy Church, whoever his name is like, does he follow all of the rules with you all? Like, he can't be missing meetings and stuff like that. So I just wanted to know, like.
Yeah, so the question was the tardiness policy. So we will be talking about later on. And I would advocate for more clear rules. You know, obviously we know that Mr. Churro is actually on vacation. That was pre-planned before.
Oh, okay.
That's why he's been absent. But you know, and I think there could be some leeway for example, I had a battery problem, so I was a little bit late. But we do want everybody engaged and present for these meetings.
Right.
So I would later on when we talk about, I would want to specify. I think they were a little vague, and I think that I would want a little bit more specificity, just so we can make sure the rules are applied equally to everybody, and everybody understands the expectations.
This is my last question. I'm sorry. Far as one's personal space or one's to make others feel uncomfortable, what I have not witnessed as of yet, but I have been told many times that one of the members has been making people very uncomfortable. So if you need me to call their name out, I will, but it's a member that makes people uncomfortable, not saying that they shouldn't do what they do, but it's a time and a place for it. And you shouldn't be doing that on national TV, number one, and in front of everybody, number two. I mean, that's what they create blankets and stuff for, you know, if it had, you know. And I was expecting if that person is not gonna be here, that's fine. But I definitely want that to be addressed. It makes people feel uncomfortable. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable. And the way that this committee was formed, it needs to be respected. That's all I'm saying. So, you know.
So thank you, Ms. Rice. And I think that it would be great if you can come to the next meeting if you're available. That's the full commission, that's the public, and make that public comment and make your feelings and thoughts on that be heard. I think that, you know, there is, I think we're just also trying to get to know each other right now. There were circumstances that were very, you know, we got together during the holiday season and was shepherded through. So, you know, and I really do earnestly believe this. I understand what you're saying and I see it. But I think a lot of it is possibly, I'm hopeful that it's arising from us not knowing each other very well and being in the same room. I'm hoping that will be the case. But you're certainly welcome. I'm sorry if it was confusing that today is just we have many meetings, but this is for the Rules Committee. But you're welcome, and thank you so much for your questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to, especially if y'all are making the rules, something needs to be done about that situation. I will hate to have to say something, and if I say something, it's not going to be. It's not going to be nice. That's all I'm saying. You know, I mean, at this point, I know the individual. We've been in the same room, but if we don't finagle the same way, that's not a problem. But this is a job that needs to be done, and that's just where I'm at. So, you know.
Commissioner Ridgway?
Yes, I want to the chair, I want to just say this to Jason. I don't think, a motion is necessarily, necessary, but I would love to make sure, if it's possible, Jason, that the rules committee meet prior to any of the other committees, so that the bylaws would be in place. Because if that had been the case, we wouldn't have to ask people to remove themselves from a committee. You know, we would have all that in up front. Now, this may be the main time we do that, because most of us would be working together at least for 2 years minimally. But, we had said that we would review the bylaws annually. But I think when new people come in, if the very first committee that's in place would be the bylaws committee, I think it would lessen any discussion about somebody having to leave a committee because of too many people on it. Yeah. And I heard people commenting at the last meeting about the chair. And they said, well, we haven't approved co-chairs. But that's because we haven't brought our recommendations or amendments or changes to the main body. But I would just like to suggest that. I don't think we need a motion or anything for that, but just as a suggestion.
I think you guys are doing a great job covering what you need to cover as quickly as you can. So there's going to be a few parliamentary hiccups and rules hiccups, but once rules are adopted, I don't think there's been any gross violations that are outside of what's in here. There's been a few hiccups parliamentary wise, but the reason those temporary committees had to happen fast before rules is because budget is coming up, and training is a huge issue with consent decree compliance. So that's pretty much the committees that are running right now, and they have a purpose and they had a need to move quicker and parallel to the rules committee. Otherwise, what you're suggesting is absolutely true. Like, this would be the highest priority committee had we not come in right at the end of budget cycle, and had we not had such a high training burden, where everyone was in a hurry to get you some training from the start. So,
but we will see how much tension
and I think
created after all
if you could get through this last part in an hour and a half, you'll have a good working copy.
Okay.
We could send it to law for a quick review. If it comes back with no major suggestions or changes, you can potentially have this before the board for a vote, just this section 1, before the 22nd, which is the next full commission meeting.
Okay.
And at least you'll have some working rules. It's not that they can't be edited, but the goal is to have some working rules, hopefully in that time frame.
Well, in fact, can't they be edited by the full body once they're presented? I mean, or amended, or
it's unusual. So that's the thing. If you look at functional boards, what we'll do is we'll send a draft out as soon as we have a confirmed draft, right? They're supposed to do their homework, read that, come back with valid questions about it. But full meetings, when there's a piece of legislation or something like the rules in front of us, is not the time to re-debate every rule in there.
Well, I was hoping
this committee is where you do that grassroots work, right? So at that meeting, it should just be about, do you support the package in front of you, or do you not support the package in front of you? And then you get a vote for that, right? But it's not about going back and editing the work of the committee. The committee is doing the work. So the question before the board on the 22nd, if you make it there, should be, do you support our work or not support our work? If you have questions about it, sure, to help you, lead you to yes or no vote, but not to edit it live in that meeting. Again,
Good.
You guys are the editing body of the
Good.
rules.
All right.
that's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. No,
That would cause,
And I think that's kind of what we tried to accomplish with the budget. And some people wanted to go back into the nuts and bolts of the budgets during the meeting, but that's a committee discussion. So the question at the table was, do you support this whole budget as you see it now, or not support this whole budget as you see it now?
And that experience in part is why I asked the question. So it's good to know that we present our work as a package that is accepted and not accepted as a package.
there's usually 5. Adriana, Commissioner Rodriguez has a work absence. This is the maximum for a subcommittee. Yeah, and that's what I think we should, because I was on that committee and I was under the impression we're just presenting it. I would welcome the other commissioners if they have, they have the same book. If they have concerns, they should email all of us before we get to that point, so we can just move ahead in a streamlined fashion. Commissioner Benito?
So with the subcommittees, I think that I don't think we should get into the conflict of interest in here, because I think that's going to be covered in the conflict of interest section. In terms of the grant and budget committee, I think that we should I would almost suggest that we just keep it as is, and trust that we're a group of adults and can sign up for some different committees, hopefully. I just worry that, or perhaps what we do is put the rules and budget committee together. But the only other change that I think needs to happen, because I really think it's imperative that we are able to adopt this on the 22nd. I think that we should establish a chair term for committees.
Yeah.
And then I think because the nature of, there will be work groups under these committees, and also like the different projects that are being worked on will change from time to time. I think it would be better to have a more flexible system for people. I think right now everyone's really earnest. At the very beginning, people are figuring out what they want to do, but I think having something where like the chairs are choosing people, I think it could just create more conflict. And I think that once we get our work going, people will be plenty busy.
So are y'all gonna establish one chair? Is that what I'm hearing? Like one chairperson
For the subcommittee.
So I'm the chair of this committee that was established last time.
Okay, what about when everybody's there?
The full
Who is the chair?
We will have a co-chair model. So we have yet to decide a co-chair, equivalent power. That's what we are proposing. And on was it a 1-year basis?
Yeah.
1 year rotating basis.
When all of you all meet, like the 13 of y'all meet, that means each one of y'all get the chance to be a chair, basically. I mean, be a chair. I'm sorry, I'm a little.
Yeah, no, right now what we've been doing is selecting a different chair for each full commission meeting, just because we don't have a chair yet. Once we adopt these, as it is in our rules right now, is we'll have a co-chair model where you'll have 2 people that will share the responsibilities of the chair, such as supervising the executive director, speaking with the media, and running the meetings, and among other things. And so they'll split up those duties how they feel fit. So one of them might be the one who facilitates the meeting, another person might do another thing, and then they'll kind of go from that. So we'll have 2 co-chairs, and those terms will be 1 year, and the co-chairs will be voted on by the entire board. The entire commission.
Entire commission.
Yeah. But then each committee, which is what we're talking about, will also have a chair of the committee. So for our committee, Terry is our
Okay, I got it,
Yeah, and I think for the budget and grants had co-chairs.
May I make one
So-
last comment,
yes.
please? And that is that the chairs that they're chair pro temps. So because we didn't know each other, we didn't know what leadership abilities, each brought to the table. We were assigning, or somebody could volunteer to be a chair, different one next meeting, for a few months while we learn who we are and what we bring to the table. And then, soon we will elect our permanent co-chairs.
That sounds good.
And what's really nice about that is that is something that has already been done successfully, with the commission. And LaToya must have done this, at least twice or 3 times with Richard Jackson in the past. So we have that model already in place, and can go back and look at their experience with it to make sure that we are able to work successfully with that model.
And I did hear y'all say something about media. So there will be somebody speaking for all of y'all in the media?
So Jason can answer that.
Okay,
And that's to be determined but it's typically co-chairs' responsibilities to speak for the whole board, and commissioners can speak on their areas of expertise individually at any time, but they can't say, this is what the whole board believes, or this is what the whole board says, unless that was already pre-discussed.
and it has to be, the chair and the co-chair has to be voted among all of you all?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay, all right. Good question.
So one last
I just
question.
want to know, because I just want to know,
Yes, I mean, we wanted and it's a co-chair equivalent models, not chair and co-chair. And the term is set there to balance all the powers.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Right, and to give everybody a chance we were obviously all 13 selected for our unique skills, and we want the full participation of the commission.
Of
Yeah.
course we do, yeah.
Mr.
Jason,
Ridgway.
yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to go back, because in this package, on the duties and powers of the chair, it specifically states, especially if we substitute chair for co-chairs, that they act as the sports person in all matters pertaining to the commission. So if we're going to grant that power to other members of the commission, we need to just put a statement in here. I'm not talking about people who are speaking only for themselves, because I thought I heard you say that the committees could also speak. So we would probably need to put a qualifier or something here that as assigned or whatever, others can speak as assigned.
Shall act as a spokesperson in all matters pertaining to the commission as a whole. So as a whole would be the group of 13 committees, technically are the group as a whole. So we could put, committee chairs have a right to speak on.
I think we need to do that, because that's
Maybe
been a discussion piece.
Yeah, and we could put it here, or there is a section in part 2 about media relations, and we could elaborate further there, specifics of who can speak and what they can speak on and how they go about doing that, and when they should consult with the chairs. So there's an operational component to this that is a little deeper in section 2.
Okay.
So it's up to you, or we could put it down here to subcommittees. Once we establish a term, we could say, committee chairs it's enumerated in here that, or implied that committee chairs can speak on committee issues, without having to consult with the co-chairs.
I did notice, can we change that to spokespeople, I guess, because there's co-chairs, just this minor thing as the spokespeople. So are we okay with that? I mean, I do agree that there needs to be more explicit specification so there's no confusion.
My concern, hello. My concern with adding something about the chairs of the subcommittees being able to speak on the business of the subcommittee is that I think that could get a little confusing, of what is the business of the commission as a whole versus a subcommittee. So I like the idea of waiting for that going in the second package on media relations. And then that can be clarified, but that feels murky to me.
Are we privileged to get the articles when you all are
Yes.
done? Oh, okay.
Yes,
Okay,
the
'cause
public bylaws,
I
yes,
definitely would like to see them. Okay.
once we finalize them. Commissioner Dawson, do you have anything to say?
No, I did not have anything to add. Thank you.
All right, so if we are okay, I think so we need to move to the terms of the subcommittees. Is that what?
I think that's where we left off before Ms. Rice commented, was we were discussing, we don't have a term for committee chairs. And also the other component was the number of people on a committee, if we cut that off, we didn't make any edits related to that. And right now it's kind of, the only provision on it is here. It's preferred that subcommittees described below are seated voluntarily. However, in order to ensure essential business of the commission's mission is conducted, the chair shall appoint, and I guess I would have to change that to co-chairs, shall appoint as necessary subcommittees, and ex officio be member of all subcommittees. So that's saying chairs can be the co-chairs can be members or fill vacancies in committees, which is the norm.
We just need an S at the end of chair there.
Got it. And again, it's never been needed to have to flex that, but I mean, I could see this is a good way to do it if you have an essential committee that no one wants to fill, the chairs will have to then fill that themselves or, basically lobby. I don't think it would ever work if you force someone to be on a committee because they're just not going to do the work anyway, so it's kind of pointless to do that. But at least here it says if you're vacant and you're short, the co-chairs have to fill that spot.
Okay.
So,
And it says now we're going to select no later than February. Do we have that? We need to temporarily, I'm imagining we're not going to be able to do that by February, or are there thoughts?
if it's adopted at the end of February, I think you just then would select as soon as possible. Like,
Okay.
and then next year it would reset to February, but no one's gonna,
Okay.
there's no enforcement provision there
Right,
for
there's
you
no
guys in your
enforcement.
first year, so,
Okay, so let's move to the terms of the subcommittees. Are there any discussion, or do we generally have a sense as to how long?
I just wanted to back up a little bit for the conversation we were having about how many people are going to be on the committees and like limiting and all that. I don't know if it's necessary right now for us to put that in the manual, just because once we get going, I think it'll work itself out. So I just wanted to make sure that we were all agreeing with that we weren't going to put that in the manual necessarily and just let it work itself out.
Okay, and I'm just concerned if it doesn't work, it's just at what point do we have to step in? I guess we can have another meeting of the Rules Committee to establish those rules. So if they are, we can, so our proposal is, let's all work it out and see how it naturalistically, and if not, then we have to come in and make some rules about that.
and generally these are,
You can work out what?
So right now, the committees can only have no less than 3 and no more than 5 people.
Okay.
We have 2 committees that already, because they're temporary committees for training and for budget and grants, that already go over the 5. And the reason that is not really permissible is that once you get 7, which we have on those committees, if all 7 vote one way, there's no need to go to the full commission. So it circumvents, the entire full commission. So, because it represents the majority of the commission then. So we want to, and it's also unwieldy, I think, with 7. But you also need at least 3 to get something accomplished. And 6 is not a good number, because what is the rule? Then if it's an even number, you need a higher proportion to pass anything. So.
and to the earlier point, you can, these rules aren't forever, so, the Rules Committee can meet to discuss a provision later and only then present an amendment to a certain provision. So you don't have to reopen the whole rule book for vote every time that you amend a rule.
To the chair,
Yes.
if I don't agree that it should not be included in here, and this is why we already have groups exceeding the number, and listened to discussions where I haven't seen people who will naturally deselect themselves from a committee. I believe we need to put this in here and just let it ride. Because I think if they had not already started on those committees, it would be different.
Yeah.
But they are there. And I just think it's important to I'm going to be a stickler sometimes with the rules, because it just makes for easier work and less tension if we know up front what we can do and cannot do, without it creating problems when 2 months later, when now we're going to bring it back in. It won't be any different. If we have to bring it back in, it's still going to create a problem. If we don't do it but a couple of months down the road, it still will create a problem for those who don't want to be off certain committees. So I really think it needs to be part of the rules that we put forward.
Maybe what we can propose is maybe about a combination. Should we give them the chance? Should we send out an email saying we need these committees to be trimmed down? And if that doesn't occur, we're going to have, I agree with Jan. That's why I wanted to go to that meeting with our contingency plans in place. And the one that I think both committees, the hiring and the budget and grants, are going to be filled, because they're highly, they have consequence, or people at least believe them to.
Let me ask, why do you
Ms.
have
Rice?
so many people writing the grant? Like, is it 7 people writing one grant?
It's reviewing. I think it's a budget and grants committee.
So
It's
it's
not
7 people reviewing one grant?
reviewing multiple grants from
Oh,
the
multiple
community.
grants
And then it's still not their decision. It has to be brought
to you all.
to the full commission.
Oh, the full commission.
But they would, I think there are people, I think there are many people that have worked with the community, that have, nonprofit experience, that they were very passionate about it. That's what my guess is. And then I was more interested actually in the budget because I felt that
Yeah.
could serve the foundation.
Right.
Ms. Benito.
Yeah, and to clarify, it's not writing grants for the commission, it's for the, like, violence prevention, all that $1 million. They'll be the ones that review the applications that I've made and just make recommendations of how the money should be given out.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and then I believe staff are the ones that generally write additional grants for the commission.
Right, and my other concern about those committees, I didn't get to watch the training committee, but in our budgets and grants, I mean, we already selected chairs, and I don't think it was with any real understanding what skills people had. So, and that is a very important committee for multiple, all the committees are important. So I think maybe we need to revisit that,
And
or,
that's why I asked, because when you're talking about grants and stuff, and I don't mean to keep cutting y'all off, people do gotta have skills in that type of stuff. I'm like, y'all got 7 people, and that's why I was like, oh, it's a lot of people who just, doing multiple grants, do they got the skills, the knowledge of it? That's what my next question was. I hate to keep interrupting y'all, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in and see if I can help things out or whatnot.
yeah, thank you so much for, providing that feedback. I think it mirrors probably a lot of our thoughts and people that are joining in that can't participate directly. So what are our proposed solutions then? If those committees are not going to trim down themselves, what are we to do? What is the fairest way? I mean, my real concern is that they've unfortunately met already. Fortunately or unfortunately, they have leadership already established. It's going to be very difficult for people to yield on those things. I don't think that the chairs, just because they're elected chairs, have more right to be on that committee than anybody else, because, I mean, I think probably a random process might be the fairest. What do you think? Eliminating, yeah.
Really?
I don't know. I mean, it's because I think the problem is like a lot of these people are, there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be arguments. I serve this role. I'm already the co-chair. I can't be moved up. I don't think that is fair though because the chairs, I mean, at least in our, weren't necessarily, we didn't make a statement of all of our skills. So Ms. Benito.
Oh, I'll yield to Jan.
To the chair, I just want to say, and we should reiterate that these were temp committees. I mean, that in itself will help to determine how we move forward. We have to just remind ourselves that these were temp committees, and now with the bylaws and everything, once approved, we go to the permanent assignments.
There you go.
Yeah, and the other point is, so you have a provision in here that if you have co-chairs, they're ex officio. So that means they're in, but they're not part of the committee. So if 2 people are not eligible to be on committees, but they're part of all committees.
Right.
So that will help you knock your numbers down as well, because once you have co-chairs elected, they can sit in all committee meetings, but they can't vote in those committees. So therefore you will be eliminating that problem there, because 2 people will be ineligible to be committee members technically in that way. So that's my read on that. And there's people with more board experience that might have a different read, but I think that's what that means is they can, they're part of all committees universally because they're co-chairs automatically, but they can't hold a formal spot on those committees.
So Ms. Benito.
I'll yield.
No, I was just going to make sure that I understood the timeline of how everything is going to happen. So if we get section 1 approved, then we will move forward with having these committees set, potentially. But then we need to also vote on the co-chairs if that's approved. So at what point do the co-chairs then become members of the committees, and then their
It's
vote doesn't
official.
count. I guess that's the part I'm trying to understand is like timeline wise, like when is everything going to be in place so that we can then say temporary committees are set or, over and now we're in our regular.
It's my understanding to the chair that once the package is approved, when it's put on the table before the full assembly, and that package is approved, we can be ready to elect the two chairs. Now, the timing will probably be dependent on how long that meeting is when we do this, but I would think at least by the next meeting, we should be putting those positions in place.
And a simple solution might be to put a provision in here under the subcommittees that, all committees will be dissolved at the adoption of these rules and reestablished per the bylaws.
Very
You know.
good. Very good.
So, but to address Commissioner Johnson's question, so does it make more sense to let the committee stand right now, elect the co-chairs, because then they'll be excluded, they can't be on those committees, is that more, and then have those committees refilled? Benito?
My suggestion, I think, because one of the things that we've been hearing from the public, and I think also, I think there's a feeling on the commission too, is feeling like we need to get to work, and like what John said, chew gum and walk at the same time. My suggestion would be that we, prior to the meeting on the 22nd, we send an email to the commissioners saying, we are we'll be presenting the full first half of our rules for a vote. One of the things that's on there is the list of these subcommittees. And there's one of the rules is that they can have between 3 and 5 members. And then my suggestion would be that maybe we create a form where people can select which committees are interested in being on, and then working from that, a list that then goes out to everybody that says, hey, here's everybody who's interested in each committee, and then kind of going from there, because and then presenting after we adopt these rules, presenting, hey, this is what we came to through discussion, like via email, and then voting on, well, I don't know if it needs to be voted on, but moving forward from there, just because I do think that I think that will inspire a little more trust in what we're doing, that we're getting these committees started. I think to the point about if both co-chairs happen to be on the same committee, and then that committee still has enough people to operate, and then I think that from there, then we could say, hey, there's some, if you would like to take one of the spots, if you'd like to join another committee, you can. Just because I don't think we're going to, as a commission, be ready to vote for co-chairs in the next meeting, and I think that we need to, move forward. One thing is, I do think the training committee, there's a police training committee, but that's a separate training topic. So I don't know if this needs to go into the rules, but we have two the temporary committees that will still continue, and that is commissioner training and then the executive director search.
Right, so the temporary committees, we could just, as Jason say, that it's dissolved after the election of the co-chairs, and we reform committees that may need to be formed. I'm imagining this committee will exist in some form, not meeting all the time unless, and some of the other, do you anticipate that the commission training committee will be necessary, perpetually?
Once they establish training criteria for professional, continuing professional education standards, they probably won't be needed. Internal training, then it becomes more of an individual commissioner keeping up with their training once the whole is done. So not for a few years, not until we have a new class come in.
To the chair, or unless we have some transitions on this board, on this commission, we might have to come back. What I want to ask, Jason, is it possible that when we submit this package of rules or bylaws to the full body, that we can pinpoint a couple of things we want to make sure they see. So 2 chairs, co-chairs, for instance, that committees, 3 to 5 members, but a couple of things in here that, because I know sometimes we're all busy, we may not read some things as thoroughly, but there would be some things that I believe would generate some discussion. So if we can just pinpoint a couple of those things, we'll be submitting the full package. We would like to make sure that you review.
Yeah, we can do it. We can do an outline of all the
Yeah,
changes.
I think that
absolutely.
would be great to
Sure,
do for
sure,
all of
yeah,
us,
yeah.
because it also will say what the most important changes might be, or the things that we really need to pay attention to as we move forward.
Yep,
So-
that's reasonable to do.
And do we want to add Chandra's suggestion that this is your kind of first notice to start thinking about which committees you want to permanently be on, that these are, and we can say that these committees are over capacity. There has to be, so my understanding from Delonte Thomas is that it's only a technical problem if they all vote one way, right? If the committee.
Well, sure, because
But
then
there's a
you
danger.
pass the whole
Right.
a majority move to the yeah. And I don't think, in the interest of time, I don't think it's most likely going to resolve itself, and it's presumptuous to say, well, these are going to pass at 5, even though it makes common sense, right? So I think that first pass the rules that address the issue if you have heavy committees, but you have to get to the point of passing the rules, right? So you could either put a provision in here to restart the committees, but once these pass, the rule is 5, so they'll immediately have to address that. So it's going to have to work itself out, anyway. So.
Okay, so we can add that provision about restarting, and then the term, we haven't decided about the term of the subcommittees.
Of the chairs of the subcommittees?
I think is of the subcommittees, what was your experience? Did they serve the entire, it would be good to have, I understand rotating the chairs more, but the committees have continual work that might require a longer tenure.
Yeah, I've never seen committees have contention for chair positions. Usually people are comfortable doing it, and then the person who's doing the most work will automatically be renominated to continue to do the most work. But I'm not saying that won't happen. So a term might just give a chance to refresh if a new person seats and they want a chance. So, but yeah, one year might be too often. 2 years is probably more practical because that's when we're scheduled to change classes.
I thought term meant the committee itself, the membership of the committee.
The term of the committee chair is what you were discussing.
Or term of the membership of the committee. Okay.
Just the chair, yeah. People will stay on a committee their whole entire time if they want.
Which I think is good.
I think it's good, yeah.
That's their area of expertise.
Right.
So I think my suggestion earlier was actually that we try to form new committees next meeting, and just restart the committees next meeting and select people, but I don't know if that's.
For the temporary committees or the other ones? Because I would not even be able to pick which one. It would take a little bit of soul searching to know which committee I would like to search. But I think we can restart the temporary committees. Especially
Oh,
the
okay.
ones-
But
those.
But not as they currently exist, because the temporary committees, we have some temporary committees that exceed the numbers.
Right.
So I just think we just need to put it out there. I think, I'm hoping that they will, self-deselect, if there is such a term as that. But I wanted to just mention this and get Jason's input on this. As far as terms for the committees, it seems like some of them, I'm thinking specifically of the budget committee, as to whether that one could even be a 1-year calendar year term, especially if the work starts in August or whatever, and you still want them active going in, to right before it's presented to the council. So that would go across a calendar year, if we were to choose a calendar year for the term of a committee. I just want to put that out there to think about whenever we start talking about terms. Yeah.
I think there are, the limitations we're putting on here are to balance all the power, make sure everything is fair. So certain committees may have, and I realize, I think the budget is so, even though it both deal with money, but the budget and the grants are very different animals. So one way I'm starting to think, the budget committee is obviously very important, but they're probably meeting how many times a year? Just 1 to twice?
The budget,
Yeah.
well,
for
when,
budget.
for grants, they're gonna meet quite heavy until each year's program, depending on if they wanna do multiple programs, so I can't answer that. The grants are gonna keep that turning, and then we go into budgetary cycle each year, typically right at the beginning of the summer. That's when we'll talk about the whole next year's budget. So they're gonna be a busy committee if you keep them together as a whole. That's up to y'all.
I think my concern with setting term limits on subcommittees is that different committees will have different timelines of projects that they're working on. So for example, Police Policy Committee, they might have some policy projects that take several years to put together. And, I think that you want people to be on the committees that they're passionate about and that they, want to work on. And so to me, setting, I understand the goal of wanting to balance power and to make sure that people have an opportunity to serve on different committees. But I think for the committees to do their best work, to me, it doesn't make sense to limit how long people are on it. But to go back, so once we adopt the rules, the commission shall at minimum maintain the following acting committees. So as soon as we adopt the rules, these become active committees that then say we need at least 3 persons. So that's why I'm saying that I think we need to, once we adopt these rules, create these committees. Again, nobody's coming after us to sue us probably to say that we haven't created these committees, but that is just kind of what my thinking is. We can put a stipulation in that once that the temporary committees are dissolved at some point, but these do become active committees once we adopt the rules.
And I would suggest that I see what your point is, and I looked at that earlier, and I was turning in my head as well. I think you should put a provision in there for the first, for this first iteration. Just say something about as soon as training is completed, these committees will be formed for the first year, right? We're in the first year, so as soon as we have training in police, general orders and police, policy, then you can immediately establish those committees, but just in that provision for the first year. So that would make sense to me. So, because to the chairperson's point here, people don't know what they want to be on yet because they don't even understand what those things are or what they entail. I mean, I think they generally do, but you'll get a better understanding when you go do the police training.
And I think that we could also, if we know, and we haven't even looked at each other's resumes here, right? So for the health of the commission, it would be great to have certain people either on committees or overlapping, so that we can grease the wheels as to who can work together, because obviously they're very interrelated, some of the committees. And I would hope that if Jason, if you can describe the committee, maybe provide descriptions of the committees, what types of people, what types of skill sets are necessary, so we at least make sure certain things are met, because I think people's interests may, match their abilities, but we need to make certain that there are certain types of minds and subject matter expertise on those committees. That's why I have a nominee for the hiring. So, and certainly it makes things, I think it makes, obviously everybody, we have great lived experience and common sense, and I think we should proceed on that, but it may be.
I will make a comment here that in the interim, I will add descriptions.
the chair. Jason, I think your other comment is well taken. Even though you may add a description, I think after the training would be a better time to say, this is the committee I want to be on. Because you'll get detailed information about what the responsibilities are. And even though you might have an interest, you might find that, oh, I don't want to that might be might end up being controversial or whatever. You may choose not to be for a particular committee, but at least after the training would probably be the very best time to say, yes, this is, I want to serve on this committee. Interest is there. I'm willing to deal with whatever comes with it, but you'll know more about how it operates after the training. And that training takes place in the second half, like on the responsibilities of the different police committees.
Yeah, the training committee's working that out, but I think they're trying to establish a time to get as much police training in as
Okay.
possible in a 1 day period, so it won't be long.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
I think
So I added that provision there if everybody could just take a look. It's for the first class of commissioners, police-related committees will be formed after initial training occurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so then I think those are all really great points. So then how do we deal with the temporary committees? Does that need to be detailed in here? And then, well, I guess it just says at minimum, it will contain the following active committees. So does that mean that we need something in here that because we've talked about how to create a work group, but I don't think it has the rules say how to create a new committee, or a new subcommittee. So I think that needs to be addressed. And then back to our original question about the current temporary committees, do we want to just send an email? Like I think, like our chairperson was saying, hey, look, these are the current committees as they stand. With the passage of this, that they're going to need to be trimmed down to 5. Just kind of, here's your opportunity to I don't know.
Yeah, maybe there's someone that will volunteer.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I do think it's a good idea to just send an email out beforehand so that people can start thinking about it.
Because I don't think it's even clear to them why this rule is
Yeah.
here. I
Yeah.
try to give them a little bit of a preview, and just edge them. So it's not at the last moment and people are frantically thinking about this. And so, so the 2 temporary ones are, but the other one also, the Grants and Budget Committee is not a temporary one.
Okay.
That's already over. So I think they're all over, right? Except for this one.
Yeah.
We're,
No one wanted to hang out with that. It's fine.
I know, we're here, building the foundation for what they can do. So, so yeah, if we can get those descriptions, I mean, even for, I don't know, I do anticipate, just from what I can see, that maybe a few of the committees will have to do some type of straw poll, or I don't know, random. So we'll cross that bridge. You think? Is that good? We'll cross that bridge after the emails. If people want to volunteer, then we know which committees to focus on.
And maybe we actually specifically ask for volunteers instead of just hoping people will volunteer. Just say, hey, we're looking for a few volunteers to leave these committees.
Mm-hmm. And maybe, do we give those volunteers, like, they at least get to choose one of the other committees first that they want to be on? It's just, or is that, I mean, I think this ultimately goes to an issue of how we choose. And I know, Jason, you said that there historically has never been a problem with maxing out these subcommittees.
Once we get these other ones established, people aren't going to have the time to do. I mean, it's just impossible to have 7 people on every committee, time-wise. I mean, not impossible, but the time commitment will be astronomical. So, yeah. So right here, just filling. So let's say you have 13 people and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 committees. I mean, you're looking at 3 to 4 people on each of these if they can only do 1 committee. If there's conflict for 2, then you might have some people, want to do two, but you should be able to accommodate that 5 rule. There's not that many of you.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have, it's inevitable you'll have vacancies too, so we're only in the first 5 minutes of this.
But are we saying that these will be formed after training, but before co-chairs, right? Co-chair election, likely.
You mean the police ones? The 3 highlighted ones?
The permanent committees, yeah. So it says to be formed after initial training occurs.
I think for the police related committee, so that's referring to the first 3. And then the other ones, I think we need to add something about if we want to wait until after the co-chairs are approved.
I mean, we just had to move those people off of those committees, right? If they became co-chairs.
Well, they would be in the committees, they just can't be voting, so
Voting,
they
yeah.
can attend, they just, that issue of 7 people voting is negated, so because of they're ex officio members of committees means they cannot vote. So when people said chairs can't vote, what they meant was, typically the chair of the committee as a whole can't vote in committees. So not the committee chairs, so when we had that conflict earlier, so.
I guess we just don't know how many people are interested in becoming co-chairs, and then is it more efficient to vote for the co-chairs than establish the committees? But it seems like we're not going to be able to do that. So
Do what?
we're not going to come to a consensus about co-chairs before we need these committees. I think the committees are pretty important. Maybe just play it by ear at this point, and naturally, hopefully, natural forces will determine some of this, and then we'll have to step in.
For all we know, the training committee might finish with their work in 2 weeks, and then, their job was just to set a training schedule for everybody that works, and so they shouldn't be around much longer, in my opinion, and so that's one problem down, and then the budget and grants, once these other committees are formed, I don't think there's people gonna wanna be on both for very long, so.
Okay.
Those are really your only 2 committees you're concerned about here.
But
So
we should we should tell them that this is the expectation, and that within a few months, we need to be down to 5 in these committees. I think if we just give them a timeline with which. Okay.
You all are learning me, learning about me. I think we're beating this horse to death. I think we just need to let this play out the way it should play out. We may put this package on the table, especially after we have identified some of the main things that we're putting, that will be coming out in these bylaws, like the 2 chairs, the requirement no less than 3, no more than 5. Let it play out. I think we have a group of intelligent commissioners who can make these decisions without our having to grind this process out. I would just like to let it play, and knowing that if we have to, we can.
Yeah.
But let's let it play out and let them assume some responsibility in how it plays out, rather than our, doing that for them. The only thing I want to just make sure of, because I don't think I heard it correctly, the assignments or the selection of the committees should not be predicated on the election of the chairs, the co-chairs. No, we can do the co-chairs whenever the package is accepted. And then we just aren't identifying who's going to work on what committee right away until after the police training is in place, so we know what people want to work where. I just think we don't need to hold up the chairs once the package is accepted.
But what my question was, are we ready as a commission to do that, right? That, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, to the chair. That's why I asked my question earlier, because I was confused on the timeline of when things are going to be in place based on when we put this in front of the full commission, like what should happen next, and after that. So that's what I wanted to clarify.
I do believe, to the chair, I do believe that if we were electing 1 chair, that would make a big difference.
Yeah.
If we are electing 2 chairs, they should be able to complement each other, even though we may not have seen every commissioner acting in a chair pro temp position. two will be totally different than one.
Yeah.
That's what I think, yeah.
So what I hear you saying is you think that we should suggest that we vote on co-chairs on the February 22nd meeting?
If the package is approved and we have time, I mean, if the discussion on the package is as long as what we have on this one, we might not get past the acceptance of
And
the
the only thing I
package.
would say is that at least at the very minimum, you could say, you could do nominations and then give it a one meeting cycle for 2 weeks for people to make their case,
Very good.
so you can at least identify at that meeting who might be interested in being nominated and then let them do their campaigning in the 2 weeks in between.
Mhm.
And then when you come back, they should have secured a second for their nomination. And then, so at least you could poll interest at the next one
That's
I
publicly
think that's a great
and
idea.
get a list of candidates, and then you guys could do your business, in between, and then come back. And I think it would be the first meeting in March. Then you could do your vote if that cycle worked. But if you press this rules and then you press an election in the same meeting, it could
Yeah,
be
it's too much. Yeah.
it's too much in my opinion. Yes.
So, do we have rules for the election of the co-chair other than the voting? Do we need any
I'm gonna
more
bring this up
rules?
about
No.
this.
No, it's Robert. It's the same. So someone has to. You can't. So it would be a nomination, right? Yeah. So it's in Robert's rules. So they go through the nomination process. They need a second. In the past, commissioners have nominated themselves, but so I don't think that's an issue. So as long as they get a second, and then you go through. You can do the rank order voting, but whoever's chair pro tem of that meeting can establish the process for the
Mhm.
vote. So
Mhm.
they could say, I make a motion to do rank order voting. The top two vote getters will be chair and co-chair, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just you set the procedure there at the meeting for how you're going to conduct your vote, and then you follow that procedure.
What I mean is, do we need to establish that there will be a set time of period before we vote that we introduce? I think that would be only fair. I would hate for it to, I mean, I don't know, what if certain people have already made a decision and they want to vote then in the next meeting, which I think would be,
They would need to carry a motion to vote. I mean, anyone could put a motion on the floor. Like someone could at any meeting say, I want to vote to be president of the United States, and then you can have that discussion and go through it. But it doesn't mean it's going to occur. So, I think if you guys come at them with a proposal and the chair pro tem's on the same page, you'll be okay.
Robert's Rules of Order will allow us to bring a slate to the table, but you can also open up to the floor at the time that slate is brought forward, asking if there are other nominations.
Yeah.
So that would be the time if someone is not on that slate already, where commissioners can add themselves or somebody else.
Yeah.
And then you vote.
As a group. I just want to make one apology to the animal rights people who might be listening in. I didn't mean literally beat the horse.
I thought I better correct that.
Commissioner Benito,
I'm good.
on that, so are we done with this section?
So we can move past it. We didn't establish a term for a chair, but you can revisit that in the
Yeah.
future. I mean, I think the committee chairs can figure that out individually, or you can set a term for committee chairs, but
Right, so
we
for the
could come
interest
back
of
to
time,
that.
since it's already nearing 6:30, and this is actually, I wanted to move this discussion to the end.
Yeah.
About the subcommittees, because I anticipated a lot of,
So, sorry, just to make sure I understand where we ended up, the three, where did we end up?
Jason, if you can give us a summary.
All right. So moving back to the
Specifically about when the committees are formed. I know the first three will be.
so you already have committees formed, so there was no consensus to dissolve.
We don't have an
committees.
outreach committee.
So no, but these committees are after training. If you want to establish an outreach committee immediately afterwards of this rules, you can. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's not an essential committee at the moment, and no one's gonna come and say, oh, you shall have an outreach. No one's ready to do it. So, so that's the point, is common sense prevails, hopefully most times. So, as soon as someone feels strongly about outreach, they'll be like, we're supposed to have this, let's do it, right? But it's not the top priority. So we can move this to, we can put a provision for this one too, but I don't imagine it'll be a problem.
This did ring. I do think we need to have a process for adding a subcommittee. So I think we could just put a line in that someone makes a.
So to add a committee would just take a motion. Anyone can make a motion. So the process
So does it
exists
need to be in
already.
there? Okay, cool.
If somebody wants to make a case for a committee and during new business, they would say, I want to create this committee. And, if they get a second, and then they call for, a vote. If it votes yes, then they form their committee.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and the outreach committee, to the chair again, the outreach committee, some of their work may already be included in training. I think it's a critical committee, especially hearing the comments that came forward at the meeting. Our residents don't know who we are.
Yeah.
They don't know what we do. And so outreach could actually mean developing some kind of program to go to ward meetings or precinct committee meetings to share who we are and how we do the work we do. And I think that's how we get support from the community and encourage them to come out and speak and share their viewpoints. They need to know who we are. And that came up in a commission, in a subcommittee meeting on the trauma committee the other day. People ask, well, who are you and what do you do? And that's when we realized that there is an education process that needs to be put in place for our community. So I think outreach is important, and it may ultimately be included in some way with the training committee if they aren't looking just at, what's required under Charter 115.
Thank you for that. And, to clarify, I think all of the commissioners hopefully will perform outreach, right? The committee is there, the outreach committee is there, is to help set the parameters and make sure that we are successful. So why don't we move, if there's no other discussion, if we can move on.
We have 1.5 now.
So 1.46 is all charter language, or?
But I think we went through all this. We went all the way down through the budget stuff, and we hit this. And I think where we stopped actually was at the 1.7 last time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Did we do 1.5?
So
I don't think we did.
So we went backwards because we went up to we did all this. So maybe we did not do 1.5.
Right.
But this is mostly being discussed in the training committee. So I don't think this is covering the basic topics that are in that training outline. The training committee already agreed with the training outline. They added 4 topics. So we could add those or automatically add them later.
Let's revisit that. What do you think? Everybody in agreement?
Yeah.
After we hear there. So now we're moving on to session 1.6 is the budget. And we already had a budget meeting.
So the only thing in here that's worth so this is all law. It's in quotations. That's right out. That says how much money you'll get. So this is the commission shall establish and maintain a budget and grants subcommittee. We've already been past that. What they consider, and then. So this goes back to law again. The executive director is charged with managing the preparation of the commission's proposed budget. What's not in here is setting a timeline each year. I wanted a firm timeline on that. That we have a budget completed and considered for vote no later than September 1st of each year. That way it falls into the city's budgeting cycle. And when they send over their package, our approved budget should be part of that package. So that's why I had September 1st in there. So,
Good to meet.
Sounds good.
okay.
So then,
And there is, the reason I highlighted this is because there is specific expenditure oversight approval process in section 2, which we'll get to in the future, that we used in the past. So when does staff have to come to you for approval, right, to spend certain amount of monies? So there's different, it breaks down the money there, when it's automatic, when the ED can automatically function. For instance, there's a provision in there when it's over like $10,000 and it's not pre-approved in the budget, the ED would have to come and present it to the budget committee to get approval to do that. So it has some checks and balances in there, but that's in section 2.
All right, so let's move on to 1.61 about grants.
And again, the part is highlighted. This is the law. It says how much we get each year. And then down here, it's we will establish administrative procedures for grants in section 2 of this manual. I think that would be an example where you'd have to work cross committee with the budget and grants to establish those.
And 1.62 is compensation for appointees, also
Part of law.
part of law. So we can move on. Now we're moving onto the major section of meetings, 1.7. And Jason, why don't you walk us through, did you only make changes for board and commission?
Yes, I made sure that that was reconciled, so it says commission. So you're basically under Ohio Revised Code here, 121.22. So a lot of this, again, is just shorthand for that big sunshine laws manual that you all received in your initial email from the law department. You're going to get more training on this this week. So if there's any conflicts here, which I don't think there are, they will come up when we send this for law review. But this is out of the old bylaws, and it also came from the way CPRB does their meetings as well. So we have the agenda. Meeting will normally be provided to all members at least 1 week prior. So the reason it says normally is because sometimes, it's a day late or a day early. We don't want to be like, oh, it shall be. We try to get the agendas done as quickly as we can. We do put the agendas on the websites as quickly as possible. We'll keep written minutes of all meetings and put them on the website. And segments of commission meetings that are open to public shall be recorded, and it's preferred they are also broadcast live like we're doing this evening. So those are just our reinforcing what the sunshine laws give you flexibility over. They don't require that you record and broadcast your meetings, but it's a new standard that most of us are following every day. So it's a good standard to have. So the chair shall ensure, and we'll change that to co-chair. Shall ensure that CPC staff maintain a public notification system where anyone can register to be notified. So we do have a listserv that will take care of that for us. In addition, there shall be publicly accessible calendar on the website, which displays all scheduled regular meetings. We have that already. Special meetings and emergency meetings. Notification will include a description of items to be discussed with agenda publicly viewable as soon as it is approved. The language changed in there because we've already, it was a little stricter, but I changed it because when we notice the meeting before we have the agenda done sometimes. So I didn't want it to be, I can't notice a meeting if the agenda isn't done, because sometimes that second part takes a little longer. What we do put on there is what the topics are, because we generally know that, but not the specific agenda.
To the chair, so this is saying that everything is limited to electronic notification. There's nothing in here addresses print notification, especially for established meeting schedules. So if we know that we're going to meet the 2nd and 4th for our full assembly, then that needs to be distributed to key organizations and institutions in the city. And that's what we were talking about last time. And I think it also came forward as public comment too, that because we have a digital divide in this city. And if people are not accustomed to using this website for anything else, there's no reason why they're going to use it for this. I'm not saying we need to do a print copy every time we have a meeting, but once that the permanent schedule is established, it should be sent out and they can put it on their board. We don't have to send it out again, but it should be sent out. And I know that the police districts do the same thing. they have it listed on the website, but they also send a print copy out for those of us who have been involved in it before too, you know. But I really would like to see something here other than electronic notifications. Because this is the community we work with and we are working for.
So, Commissioner Benito?
Do we want to add something that says the commission will maintain a list of community organizations that at least once per year will be sent a calendar of meetings to be posted?
Yes. Yes.
Did you get that?
Yes, it's publicly in that part on the website and in print to,
Well, I think it can be sent electronically to them, and then they can print it out to be posted and to be, yeah.
For those organizations that even have the ability to receive it electronically.
Right, yeah. So maybe we don't even clarify that. We just say that we have a list of community organizations that, well, at least once a year the calendar is sent to for posting, and then depending, some of those groups might receive an email, some of those groups might get a packet drop off.
Jason, is this is your calendar a dynamic one that, you know, once it's sent out, is it a static one, or can it be changed? And
Yeah, we do paper as much as we can. So when we put out the notices, like, you know, if we know in advance we're going to award, we'll paper the award. The problem with making it mandatory is we don't always have the staff to get out there. So if you make a rule that's hard to follow, the public can hold you accountable to that rule. We don't always have the resources to reach everywhere with paper. So while we should probably put something in there, I'm not in disagreement with it. Just be careful you don't paint us in a labor corner that makes it really hard to paper distribute across a wide area when we don't have necessarily the full resources. Also, if we make an amendment or a change, the problem is we have to go catch the old paper and replace it with the new paper too. So it's easy to amend the digital parts. It's harder to get information when we change a meeting or location and things out there on paper. So
to the chair, that's not what I'm saying.
yeah.
In fact, what I'm saying is once we have established a permanent schedule for our regular meetings, if it's going to be the second and fourth Wednesday of every month, you don't need to send that out every month. Once that schedule has been established, you send one print copy and ask them to post it and make it available to the residents or the clients that come in. I'm not saying paper every place. I'm also not saying establishing a frequency with that. Once it's a permanent schedule that's established, we just send that out. We have had schedules like that on the bulletin boards at Garden Valley, one that may still be there a year later, you know, because it's a permanent schedule. And then it's our responsibility if it start looking a little weathered, you know, to reprint it and stick it back up. So I'm not asking for anything that will require undue labor on the part of staff, but I do think we have a responsibility to our public to make them aware of the meetings that we have, especially those permanent meetings and the dates. And it could be once a year or twice a year we send it out. And if it's already on your if some of these organizations are already on your distribution list electronically, you know, you may not need to send it out, but not everything has a website or something where they can post it. So I wanted to just clarify that because I definitely don't support creating another whole labor area for staff. But I do think that some organizations need to receive paper copy. And, you know, it may be that some of us can give you a list of those who need to receive paper copy. Yeah.
And when we have put when we do our outreach events and we print things, if there is a fixed schedule, we always put it on there, you know, or we'll say the commission meets for the second and fourth of every month. You know, and then we say, here's where you find the most updated information to know where the locations are for that. We do our best with print, and if you list, if the other thing is organizations that if they're not digital and we haven't engaged with them or they haven't signed up for even an email, I don't know where to look for them. So we
That's why-
work with council and the ward clubs. So we to get out to those resources, we have a mass distribution list. So if you're going to consider something here, just, we can't know what we don't know as well, where to put them. But rec centers, we could certainly say we could put schedules at all rec centers once, because that's a known, right? We could put schedules in all council people's offices. That's a known, right? But beyond that, it changes so fast. Like even our list, when we do mailers, we get a lot of it back because organizations have closed, their addresses are wrong.
I was thinking about like development offices, because they have a bulletin board. I was just looking at Burton Bell Con last week.
CDCs, yeah.
See-
So those are the three knowns: Recs, CDCs, and council people's office. Those are the three core areas that we know are fixed, stable. And when we do print, we try to always hit libraries too, or another one.
Libraries would be
So
one.
those are our four that we've always traditionally focused on with print, is go to those four.
Yeah.
So
And
I can list them there if that's preferred.
I'm not even saying they have to be listed, but I think we need to say something that print notifications of the schedule will be mailed out as needed or something like that. I just don't want it to only address electronic format, because that did come up in the public comments at the last meeting.
So maybe I suggest, in addition, there shall be a publicly accessible calendar on the website. You can add a new sentence too. Are there any linguistic designations we want to make in that? No?
We don't have to, I don't think we have to designate it.
I think it could be good to say that we have some. Well, actually, this kind of brings me to my next thought, if it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, can you tell me on I didn't notice it when I looked over our public notification. Do we include any language of if any accommodations are needed? Is there any information on, like, do we include a contact person for how people would reach out for accommodations for the public attending meetings?
On our website?
On our public meeting notices that go out.
I've never seen that on a notice, so if you have an example of that, so even on like when we look at any organization in Cleveland, I've never seen a public notice under sunshine laws have a provision that says, I'm saying it's a good idea, but I would need a model for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to write
it right away.
I'd be happy to write something for you. My suggestion would be, do we have something?
And I would
on the
have to
website?
work with city law on it, because
course.
it's not just accommodations, it has to be reasonable accommodations. So,
Right, I know.
so we can't just say we would accommodate anybody. So
I have a lot of experience.
Yeah,
I understand.
I know you're the expert. I want to work with you, so we can have a sidebar on that.
Yeah.
I don't think we can put it in the rules.
I do think that there should be. I actually do think that it should go in the rules that there is information on how somebody requests a reasonable accommodation, because that's not saying anything about what will be provided or how it will be provided. It's just saying that there's information, like people need to know how to request it. And so my suggestion would be at the bottom of every public notice that goes out that says, if you are in need of reasonable accommodation in order to attend this meeting, please reach out to XYZ.
And that kind of language is on almost all library program flyers. And it's
Pretty
whatever's
standard.
sent out, yeah. A lot of public
Right.
kinds of organizations will have language like
Right.
that. Mhm.
Is there anything on our website right now that says like who to contact in the office for accommodations?
No, but we have a general info line, so it says anything you need or any questions.
Yeah, so then I
contact
would say that maybe the language that we put under is, if that all, I would say that all public notices that go out need to include information on how to request accommodations. Reasonable, and you could say reasonable accommodations for attendance.
Okay, so any more discussion on that? Jason, will the specific language need to be concurred with, this law department?
It's not saying what the specific language is, it's just saying we'll include a sentence with contact information on how to request accommodations. So I think that then the specific language can be figured out later.
Okay, great.
Or instead of sentence, you could say information.
Okay,
And then I think to your point about language access, I think that might be that might be a good question for the outreach committee.
I know you probably intended something different, but reasonable accommodations that could fall under
Language.
Yeah.
language.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
we just have to, make sure that everyone can participate. I don't mean to belabor this point. I think it's a little bit, for the public health crisis conducted via Zoom or WebEx. Is that,
Did that go, oh, yeah, is it still on?
It's not at the moment. When this was written, it was. Under City of Cleveland, we can still use Zoom or WebEx for our meetings. CPRB is still doing it. So they're doing their thing, and the law department said that it's under the charter to
well,
continue.
I'm just
As a home rule?
noting because of the rule that they just passed, because, Zoom is definitely owned by,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
well, I don't think they've gone that deep with their
Okay.
worries about
Let's keep our-
infiltration from foreign governments, but
Right.
but it doesn't hurt to have this in here. Obviously, we can't everything that breaks the law. So if when we send it to legal, if they have a problem with it, they can axe it. But I didn't want to give you guys. I wanted you to have an option in
Yeah.
case there's an emergency, and you still have to do your business to have a way to convene.
And, and that might also be, because I remember during the budget meeting, one of our commissioners was on whatever this thing is called, this teleconference. It was very difficult for him to hear and vice versa.
And that was a technical error. We didn't have that thing mic'd, so I just didn't have the volume up high enough. We could have put a mic in, and it wouldn't have been an issue.
So I anticipate
So-
there will be times that, commissioners may be absent from, this physical location, but still want to participate, and they are allowed to, attend the meeting that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on, because we have, we're running a little, behind schedule. Let's move on to 1.7. Is there any points of contention there?
We need to add an addition to the chair. We need to add an addition to the order of business. We need a call to order before we do a roll call.
Right.
Okay.
I was also going to suggest that we move number 4 because to higher up on the list, because that's how we've been doing it. I don't know if that matters, but I think we did it. Did we do public comment before the approval of minutes, or was it after?
There was a vote in your orientation meeting to do public comment
Yeah.
first. So
Yeah.
that's, right now it's binding, but if you change it in the rules, you could put a note here that it's preferred to do it first.
Yeah.
I'm finding now that sometimes that doesn't work so well, because at that last meeting, people don't show up on time, and then you exclude them from comment if you cut it short at 6:15.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
So that's a lesson learned for me, is putting it up front is great, unless the people don't get there until it's over with, and then they don't have a chance to talk. So, I suggested to Pete at that meeting that he reopen it, and he did, because too many people had come in tardy. So,
Yeah, that's a great point.
But Robert Rules of Order will allow you to make changes to the agenda at the very beginning of the meeting. You can ask, for point of order and make those changes. So, for instance, that would have accommodated what happened with,
and it says normally at the
Later
top, so this isn't a set order.
Yeah.
This is just giving you a roadmap, right? Because that way you don't have to recreate the wheel every time. you
Is there
do
an
it.
option to have split the public comment into 2 sections at the beginning and the end? Would that be helpful for understanding reactions from the community to the meeting?
You could put in here, so the law says you guys have to give them reasonable opportunity. So I think what you did with, when you reopened it was great because we were compliant with 115. If someone comes in late, they didn't get a reasonable opportunity. You know, if they say, oh, like what you did with Ms. Rice here is great, you gave her a reasonable opportunity. So I think that's a standard that no other body that I'm aware of in Cleveland has. That was something the voters specifically inserted. But again, this is flexible, so I wouldn't spend too much time on it because you could, at the chairs, the co-chairs set the agendas and they can make it any way they want, anytime. So that's kind of just, this is pretty turnkey stuff and it's very flexible. So,
Okay, so let's move on to special meetings. Any, give at least 21st notice to private, posted. Do you want to make the addition about paper here?
so special meetings have, this is right from the law. So really the 24-hour notice this is meant to be like, if you had to, if something happened in the community, right? You have a minimum standard of 24 hours and it just has to be noticed. So you don't have to go too deep into this if you're having a special meeting and the reason it's here is so public bodies have ability to be reactionary to something that occurs. So you can do that relatively quickly and your threshold is 24 hours. So I think that all of this applies and a lot of our special meetings are planned way in advance. So they're just mean it's not a regular board meeting, it's a special meeting. So
I think we just need to add co-chairs under special meeting.
right, so
co-chairs.
I will do a search of that too to make sure there's nowhere that the chair sticks out here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, Jason, you're doing great. I know you're sick.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Jason, there's a few sentences, like the last one also, that's missing a period at the end. It's just section 2 of this manual. Okay.
And we will, when we clean it up, we'll
Clean it up,
reformat it and
reformat,
make
okay.
sure that we do all the minor tweaks
right.
like grammar stuff.
So moving on to emergency meetings.
So emergency meetings, again, are emergency meeting is convened because the situation requires immediate official action for this type of meeting. The notice requirement is immediate and it has to go to the media at a minimum. So if you were to have a severe crisis, occur, that would be what an emergency meeting is. And your only mandated notification is to the media. And Delonte will specify, and this will go to law and they'll double check everything, but this is going off of what Sunshine Law had. And it does have the provision, you can't have an executive session at an emergency meeting. So,
All right, let's keep it rolling. Work group meetings.
the one thing I would add here is the way we've done special meetings, I didn't catch this until now, is that, let's see, how would I word this? So we've had special meetings on topics that didn't require the whole body, right? So I want to make that clear because it's something that I pushed to deal with Tyree Nichols. If you can't get the whole group to agree that a topic is important, you don't want to limit the ability of a few commissioners to pursue something, right? And then bring that back to the board as a whole, right? So how do we allow that flexibility? It's been something that's worked great in the past for the commission, is, like Latoya Logan had her accountability meeting. She would call a special meeting on a topic, right? You didn't have to wait for a 13-person vote to approve that. So long as it doesn't have a high cost, right? If all you need is a little help from the staff to find a place, 2 or 3 of you can get together. It's not a danger that you can vote or have a discussion for the whole group there and go out and have a meeting in the community. I think it's a valuable tool. And now that I'm reading this, it's in here as only the co-chairs can call for that. But I don't think that's how we've done it in the past always. So maybe a provision in here that, up to 3 commissioners can conduct a special meeting, provided it doesn't, require a budgetary commitment, a high budgetary commitment, to have a meeting on a topic, to do research or get the community's input and then bring it back to the whole.
Are you saying up to 3 commissioners can call for a special meeting?
Or get together just to do it, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't mean other commissioners can't attend, but it can't be a business meeting or then it's a committee, right? So it would have to be, they're the only ones doing that. They're not in danger of, of being a quorum of anything. Typically, it's been 2. You may want to limit it to 2 because 2 can't vote for anything. So, that's my one thing on special meetings.
So right now, what it's saying is upon petition of majority, this is for a meeting called by the co-chairs, the majority of commissions.
Right. So this is special meetings may be held at the call of co-chairs. That is in there, but it's that's not been the past practice. So as I said before, so special meetings of the whole can be called by co-chairs. That's what I would add in
Yeah,
here.
right.
They could say we need to have a special meeting of the whole,
commission,
right?
yeah.
But I don't want to limit it that special meetings can only be meetings of the whole.
Mhm.
So
Of the whole commission, of the entire commission.
So
What
to
does the
chair.
upon petition, sorry?
Okay,
That's what I was asking. Is
Yeah.
that for,
well, so let's say the
So
chairs are dead set on not meeting because something
Oh,
is
I see.
about them or is affecting them, right? So the reason that language is in there is maybe the commission is unhappy with the co-chair, something they did, and they want to have a special meeting to discuss that, right? The co-chair shouldn't have the authority to do that. So if you get the petition of majority of commissioners telling the co-chairs we want to have a special meeting, they have to call that. It's a checks and balances thing. So, and it's designed around a single chair before, so it sounds a little different with co-chairs in there. But when you have one chair who has the power to say, no, I won't meet on a special meeting topic, the majority of commissioners can petition and say, well, we're going to have this meeting.
I think it would say petition by a majority instead of. So I was reading that as if a majority of the commissioners agree to it. So, okay, yeah, cool.
Right, so are we,
and did we want to individually make clear that there's another forum for a special meeting that doesn't require of the whole?
So,
Yeah.
So the way I would write that is special meetings,
with less than,
yeah, managed by less than 2 commissioners to,
Does managed mean attended or like created by?
we can work on that word in a moment here. Let me get the
Sorry.
less than 2 commissioners related to the work of the commission involving the public can be conducted without vote of the whole. Something along those lines. And typically, and it's hard to define what that is. The best example I have is when council goes out to their ward clubs, right? They have meetings and they have conversations with the community, and it doesn't affect the business of council as a whole, but they're bringing that information back to the group as of a whole to process, right? They can say, we had this meeting on this topic, or they bring it back to a committee to feed that committee, right? So that's what we've done in the past, and I'm not really sure, because it's never been defined formally. It's always been an informal thing, but I think at this point, we need to define it formally a little bit.
So, to the chair, Jason, are you saying then that if 2 or 3 people decide to meet, the results of that meeting, those results will come back to the full? I'm just trying to figure out, is there any requirement or responsibility to, for the chair to know what comes out of that? As the chair, as chairs, it seems to me that they, even if they don't agree with it, they should be aware of it, especially if ultimately they become the spokesperson of a sports, I can't even say it, spokespersons board. It seems to me that there should be a responsibility to at least, I mean, I'm not saying get approval to do it, but to let them know, or we had this and this is the outcome from that. I mean, so we can just go out and do a meeting and not bring any information back to the full body or to the chair? I'm just questioning it. I'm just trying to see.
I see what you're saying. So I guess I would say special meetings managed by less than 2 commissioners they've never been done without staff assistance. So, that's one thing. I've never had commissioners just go and do a meeting like that would be, it could, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but,
I think it would also say 2 or less commissioners.
That would be one.
2 or right, gotcha. On topics
And then,
related to the work of the commission involving the public can be conducted without vote of the whole.
as long as the full commission
Yeah.
is notified.
Yeah, and it's always been like a practice. So we're doing things a little different because this is where what we had in the past was the old law director allowed for a meeting called PPA, and it was, I forget what the acronym stand for, but it was a monthly meeting of commissioners that was not public. And that's where they would discuss things like this amongst each other. So this is a little different model under this administration, the full transparency. And that's where, so it's always been supported. No one's ever told another commissioner, don't do that. Don't pursue your own interests. Don't go have a meeting about a topic. And this came up because of the last meeting, the idea that to talk about what happened in Memphis has to be a whole 13 commission supported thing, right? So in the past, if 1 or 2 commissioners wanted to have a meeting specifically about Tyree Nichols and what happened in Memphis, right? And then bring it home on topics related to the commission, they would just have the authority to go do that, right? They would work with staff, they'd get support from their peers. Not everyone might not support it, right? But nobody's ever stopped someone from pursuing an individual interest like that so long as it contributes to the work as a whole. So that's what I'm trying to capture here because it's a perfect example. We could have said, well, we might not have the ability to make a full statement right now, but if a couple of commissioners wanted to go and have a special topic meeting on this, right, we would notice it to the public, we would let it know it's happening. Business isn't really being conducted by the whole commission, but what we're doing is talking to the community about a specific issue related to that, like diversity in policing or the special units of policing or whatever it may be. And that's how we get what the community wants us to do. It's the main way we've operated to get community feedback on issues.
I guess the clarification that I'm asking for or trying to understand is that once you've done that, once you have come up with a statement, for instance, does it come back to the full commission at that point, or they can go ahead and publish it on behalf of the?
No, nothing can ever be published on behalf of the commission. So if it were the point where to get data, typically that would come back as raw data, and it could be later used in a report. But otherwise, it would just be data that staff would use in things in reports later or whatever it may be. If it was feeding into a committee, and that committee was working on a report, yes. So but to be an official publication of the commission, it would have to always get a vote by the majority.
I would just not want to be in a chair position where something has occurred outside of the full body. It has gone public, and then I'm being called as the chair saying, you have an opinion on this. And I said, I don't even know about it. I didn't even know people were meeting or drafting something. That's the thing that concerns me about this a little bit. That's why I was trying to see what happens once a group has met, once they have decided on whatever it is they need to decide on. How does that information get to the chair? I mean, I understand that if we say they can't veto it, but I would not want to be uninformed as a chair about something that has happened in the community. I would not want that.
Notification to co-chairs is required. I mean, that's an easy way.
It's just a notification, not approval, but notification.
Yeah, and it may be overthinking this. This may not qualify as a meeting of under Ohio public records law. Obviously, it's going to be public. I mean, we're not having a closed door meeting about this, right? Because that's just 2 or less commissioners can meet for coffee. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about when we're involving the public in a topic? How do we give ourselves the freedom to pursue individual interests? Because we saw how hard it is to pivot this whole board to accept pursuit of a topic. And I fear that we'll paralyze ourselves if we don't allow some leeway for people to go out and do exploratory work into topics.
And that's not what I'm objecting to or voicing an opinion on. My thing is do it, but let the chair know after the fact or whatever, we met and we're doing this. I just think that they should be informed about what's going on.
And I'll put in here, it is, do we want to make it mandatory that they work with staff on these instead of doing it independently, like to plan it, or do we want to just say it is recommended that they use staff resources in these circumstances?
So I just wanted to clarify, say, a commissioner wanted to do research in addition to the staff, right? The staff is obviously very busy. If, for example, if I have connections to a person that's an expert on something, that doesn't and if I wanted to bring another commissioner, would that qualify as a special meeting?
No,
or is it just
if you're doing
exploratory?
research, that's just a project. I mean, 1 or 2 commissioners can do any project with they can go to CSU and meet with a professor and talk about an issue, and bring that back to the committee how they wish. If we're paying somebody, it's different. That's depending on the standard, that would require different threshold and approval.
So maybe you can explain like a scenario. This would be if a group of commissioners want to meet about the Tyree Nichols.
And have room for public comment.
Room for public comment.
Yeah, I think it's like when the public is involved, when the public's invited to.
Yes,
Right.
yes. It's not a. I mean, you guys have meetings. That's business meetings. What you're talking about. That's a different topic. Business meetings can't be so you can't have what Delonte talked about with that is 3 of you in this committee can't have a business meeting because then you're a quorum of this committee, right? So then it's a committee meeting, but 2 of you could because you're not a quorum. So you could go talk about, let's go look at research or go to the library and research a topic. That's just a business meeting, right? So you have to watch how many people get in a room and for what purpose. But here, if the commissioners were managing this and only 2 were part of it, for instance, if you had a panel discussion and 2 commissioners were on it and you brought in other experts, but the commission was hosting it, that would fall under this, right? Somebody wanted to bring in experts and have a panel discussion. It would be this. It's not necessarily a whole commission meeting. Commissioners could sit in the audience, but they're not part of that meeting, right?
So my last comment to the chair is, so I had decided that I was going to write an op-ed piece on just the urgency of our work in relationship to what happened in Memphis. I'm not belaboring the Memphis piece because I knew that a statement was being developed for that. And so I think it came up in a thread over the weekend, and I text one of the commissioners and said, I've done this. I want to bring it to the staff to look at it to see if it's acceptable, if it's okay. I was not sending it to the media. In fact, I specifically am saying that I'm not expressing the opinion of the commission. It's my opinion, personal opinion. But then I got a text questioning whether I should even do that. And so I said I would be bringing it to the staff to review to see if it's appropriate before I did anything. But here, I got a little bit of pushback about it. So those are the kinds of things I'm talking about in terms of who is there. Is it possible to do something like that? Definitely with staff, review without going to the full committee, the full assembly.
Yeah, and so we don't want to be so bureaucratically limited that we can't we stifle our creativity. And I heard the word novel and innovation, right? So I think if there's a question, bring it back and we'll review it, right? But we don't want to write rules that are so rigid that no one can accomplish anything individually or in a small group without needing the consent of 13, because we'll be locked and we won't ever move forward. So I think that's what I'm trying to etch out here. And there will always be case by case basis. And your best point is, if it's not me, have an executive director that can help you or staff that can help you flesh out, what the guidelines are individually. But traditionally commissioners have pursued wonderful projects in small groups, and then eventually through a committee they'll lead to a report. That report has to go to the whole body if you're going to produce something publicly with the commission's name on it, right? But growth and development should happen also on a smaller scale.
Okay, so, Jason, what were you gonna add? It is,
recommended
Mhm.
that they consult with staff.
Okay. And again, we can adapt these rules and seek approval of the commission as we go along. We're gonna probably encounter multiple situations. So I agree. I do really want us to move to the portion about attendance. Do we have, so section 1.7 in the work group meetings, is there anything in the rest of section 1.7 that? Oh, here's the attendance. It's 1.76 is what we should start with. Attendance, meeting attendance and participation. So obviously it's our duty to attend all regular scheduled meetings and subcommittees when applicable. Right now, reasonable effort should be given, provide notice more than 72 hours in advance. Okay. Do we want them to notify also the subcommittee chair? It says right now, commission chair and CPC director for the subcommittee. So it should be commission co-chairs.
Yeah.
So yes, I
And
will share.
Co-chairs and executive director, or subcommittee chair when applicable as soon as, or something like that. And we are okay with the timeline 72 hours in advance. Excuse absences, do we have an inclusive list? The inclusive list of excused absences and emergencies are illness, family leave, out of town trip, emergency, Cleveland Police Commission related business, and religious or cultural events or obligations.
Do we want to include work?
Work conflict, or is that too broad?
So that's been a past issue. Someone can always blame work, and then it's excessive. Like, I think the reason that wasn't in the old bylaws, this list was, is because people will always blame work. And then at what point do you say, okay, you knew that you had a job. Do you really have the time to do this, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
I think within limits, work is an excused absence, but for the most part, I think it becomes a problem if somebody always uses that as an absence excuse.
So, and it also says the chair will have discretion to class, should it be chair or chair of the co-chairs? Or is it the co-chairs of the committee too? At the next to last sentence, the co-chairs will have discretion. I mean, I'm opening that up for discussion. Is it there seems to spread it would be probably the responsibility of the chair of the subcommittee.
Oh, to define.
Yeah, to define.
Oh.
We could say commission co-chairs and or committee chair as applicable.
I'm hoping this is not going to be an issue. I mean, these are pretty broad, ways that,
I think where it becomes a question for me is when it relates to chronic absenteeism.
mhm.
So to me, it adds a little more weight to needing to clarify that under that section. If subcommittee meetings are counted under the policy for chronic absenteeism.
Okay.
So maybe we should read that and then come back to it. Because one thing
Right.
I noticed is it said any commissioner who has 3 notified absences in a row, and if someone went on a 2-week vacation
Mhm.
and you're on 2 subcommittees, you could very easily end up with 3 notified absences.
Right.
And
So does the the attendance, it seems to suggest it includes the subcommittees what does when applicable mean?
That's what I was hearing with you.
So which specific part are you looking at?
1.76, the first sentence, it says,
Up here, okay.
right, when applicable. What is when applicable?
Well, when applicable would be when they're in session. So, it's only applicable if it's during that period where you didn't, so if you're gone for 2 weeks and you had 2 subcommittees in that week, it's applicable. So sometimes the subcommittees aren't meeting, it can't be held against you. So that's the best way I could describe it.
And we are able to meet as John did, right? We are able to call it, right?
Well, for now, yes, because according to the law department, there is a home rule Cleveland City Charter provision that's allowing that. It's different than state law says. State law says no right now. Apparently council has, and I've yet to see it. I've asked for it. I haven't seen it yet. There is a local provision, a home rule provision that says, yes, that's why John was allowed to do that. And he was even allowed to vote according to that provision. If that expires, then we would default to state law, which is no, you can't. That would be proxy if you're calling it and voting. So
yeah, here's my concern is that under the chronic absenteeism policy, anyone who has 3 notified absences in a row, it triggers the chair to initiate the removal process. So that means that if you are gone for two weeks and you miss 2 subcommittee meetings and a full meeting, then the chair automatically has to trigger.
And these are from the old bylaws, so I think that was specific to so they did monthly meetings, right? So that would be a 3-month absence under the old bylaws. So that now looking at this, I think here what you would want to do is extend that out based on full commission meetings, right? So pick a number, because that would be, and this has come up and they had a really hard time with this. So that's why they made it so restrictive. That would mean you missed, at the time this was written, that means you've been absent from full commission meetings 3 times over a period of 90 days because it was once a month meetings. So that your scenario definitely applies to us right now. But so look at it in the context of you guys are meeting twice a month, right? Full commission meetings. How many of those would you allow someone to miss consecutively before you would say this is a problem?
Right, but right now it doesn't, and nowhere does it specify full commission meeting.
And we'll change that, right? Because like I said, I took this out of the old bylaws and that's what it was specifically for.
That's part of what I was talking about today.
Yeah, for sure.
So do we want to say meeting for a period of time? Would that help? Is it span? So they considered it reasonable to give 90 days to a person to correct their absenteeism, right?
I think that's too long.
That's too long to me.
Yeah.
But that's a notified absence.
Notified,
So-
right?
That's different.
Yeah, what I'm saying is for the notified absences. And
It's to prevent the abuse of the of the apps, like notification, right?
Right.
So that they can just say, well, I'm sick or I need to go to a check.
Or work.
Yeah.
I'm at work.
But also remember that unnotified includes anything that does not exceed 72 hours. So if you are sick, and hopefully if you're sick, you can figure out a way to call in or something. But if you're sick, a lot of times you don't know that you're sick 72 hours before a meeting necessarily. So just anything that automatically triggers a removal process, we just probably want to be a little careful. But I think if we
it says
indicate,
reasonable effort be given. 72 hours. So
Oh,
it's
okay,
not,
cool.
it's
Oh, good,
not,
that's not beholden.
right.
Great.
More than, right. So I think illness, especially in this new reality that we're in,
Right, maybe it's because under chronic absenteeism, it says unnotified means a member did not contact 72 hours before the upcoming meeting. So maybe it says,
this is slightly in contradiction with at the beginning, it says a reasonable effort should be given to provide notice more than 72 hours in advance. And that is the definition of of like an absence. But here it's saying if it's not 72 hours before upcoming. So, I mean, I don't know if it's easier to, depending on the circumstance, that we need to write specific circumstances where there are different timelines available. I mean, certainly
give
out of town trip
discretion.
should be 72 hours. I mean,
Yeah.
family leave, right? That means,
And further down, you have a 60-day non-participation rule. So
oh,
when you're mathing it out,
it's not making,
yeah, when any commissioner has not participated for a 60-day period in commission business at all, so that's a broader statement. So if they're not answering emails or they're not attending meetings,
well, and what I thought was interesting is the 60-day participation rule actually contradicts with the other one that says it will trigger, like they would have already had a meeting of removal triggered by the time you got to a 60-day non-participation rule, because non-participation over 60 days would mean that you had at least four, if you're on no committees, you would already have at least 4 unnotified absences. So you would have already been triggered for the removal process. So I think we have 3 different questions here. One is for the chronic absenteeism policy, are we referring to subcommittee meetings and full commission meetings or just full commission meetings? So maybe let's tackle that question first, because the one before the general policy allows for some discretion, right? But for the chronic absenteeism policy, are we saying that it's specifically for full commission meetings, or are we including subcommittee meetings in that?
and we don't have to be this harsh. Just so you know, this came from a lot of frustration about attendance. So they decided they wanted to put really strict rules on attendance.
I mean, that's
So
good.
I mean, we could have 2 different policies for the subcommittee meetings and the full commission. I think it's reasonable if you're missing 3. Well, unless I think a vacate. What if would someone go on vacation for a month and a half?
yeah, and that would be under extended absences here. So you can
Okay.
grant a leave if you know you're leaving for a long period of time. Then it's different. You're asking for an extended leave. So this is just like 3 sick days in a row.
Right.
Versus if someone knows they have something planned, a sabbatical or something, and they say, I want to be gone I know I'm going to be gone for 90 days. It's a different point of consideration because that second one requires the forethought,
Right.
and then you're petitioning to hold your seat for a period of time.
Sure, Ridgeway.
Yes, to the chair. Are we allowed to, and I think this is what you're referring to, I just want to make sure, to attend meetings virtually?
Right now, under city charter, according to the law department, yes,
Okay.
yeah, and I don't know how long that's going to last.
I also wanted to know the process for that. So subcommittee meetings that have been held that I'm not a part of, I've always gone virtually and heard them. I think you did that for meeting Charles after the fact. So is there a process for notifying staff or someone that we are virtual and not here present?
I think we take a roll call, right?
Yeah, when they
We aren't able to.
Through this, we will be.
Oh, through that we will be. Okay.
yeah. So
That's if we're on the committee.
If we're on the committee.
No, I'm talking about because it talks about it also
But what
says regularly scheduled meetings and So that's just the people on the subcommittee,
Right.
not those, gotcha, okay, I got it. Mhm. Thank you.
I mean, we're not requiring, the full commission to look at the subcommittee meetings, right? Okay. So,
I think that we could keep this chronic absenteeism policy as is. I mean, it is a little harsh if we specifically say that it's related to full commission meetings. Then we don't have to like add, change a bunch of it. It just is, and then for,
we can make a special provision maybe for the subcommittees. What if somebody doesn't attend?
Yeah.
They should be replaced, or then what if we can't get a quorum then?
yeah,
You
maybe
know?
then we add another thing that it says, maybe that it's like for each. So
do we want to make it only related to full?
I think we should have two sets of rules for the full commission meetings and the subcommittee meetings.
Chronic absenteeism related to meetings of a whole include meetings of the whole. Right?
I would say full commission meetings.
To make it more clear. I mean, do we want the subcommittees to have discretion to decide what to do with a chronic absentee member? Would that be easier if they have discretion?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I would recommend discretion because there could potentially be times when you're not at a subcommittee meeting because you're out having a meeting or you're doing some research or, something like that. So yeah, I would leave that at the discretion.
Okay.
And we can put that down there that chronic absenteeism in subcommittees can be addressed by the subcommittee chair and in conjunction with the co-chairs if necessary. So if it's creating such a disruption, like where it disrupts the business of that subcommittee, then they can bring it upward to be addressed by the chairs. But
and if to make it more clear what Chandra has said, maybe that 3 identified absences, please, can we refer to section 1.765, the extended absences, as an exception to that? Right? Because if it's 3 notified, right.
3, or 3 notified absences in a row with the exception of
Exception to circumstances
Yeah.
outlined in 1.765.
Yeah.
I guess we should list it. Looking at that, I guess we would make that an excused absences granting of a extended leave,
Yeah.
right? So, and that would cover that.
Oh, wait, no, but my understanding is that excused absences are still notified absences.
Right.
So I think it would still need that qualifier.
Or is that, there's 2, what is the difference between excused and notified? And well, unnotified is very clear, but are notified absences excused except in the event of a chronic absenteeism?
Oh, I thought that notified absences were excused absences because you would need to notify in order for them to be excused,
So it
correct?
says, the chair will have discretion to classify absences excused or unexcused, even with the notice.
Oh, okay, I think that is
But
where
these are the excused absences. Right.
Also, excused absences do not count toward this policy. The
I
chronic
don't know, because
absences.
then it says notified absences.
Yeah, and we
Yeah,
could take
that's
that.
right.
We could take that. We could elaborate on this if it's causing, again, it's coming out of the old bylaws, so
3 unnotified or unexcused absences?
Unexcused, unnotified?
Or I think. Unnotified is the first.
Well, because,
What is a notified unexcused absence?
would be you told the chair, hey, I am gonna not be there for this thing, and they would say, I don't believe that it fits this
Falls.
list, so therefore I'm not excusing it. But you still notify. I mean, the chances of that happening would be pretty a tons.
So in order for it to be an excused absence, it has to fit within this list.
Correct.
So you can notify
And still not be
and
excused.
still not be excused.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess the first thing we need to figure out is, are these inclusive of all the circumstances that we would deem excused?
I mean, one question is, let's say somebody's child's birthday is a certain night. That is something that is not an out-of-town trip, not family leave, it's not illness. So,
Family-related leave or obligation? Is that too broad?
Religious, cultural events, or special occasions. I mean, you could say that.
yeah, or special occasions, yeah, like that. Because it's not saying it has to be,
What are the other, so
because there's still discretion, correct?
car trouble will be under emergency.
Like because you could say, oh, this is a special occasion. The chair could still say no, right? You could be like, it's my dog's birthday. It's a special occasion.
I know.
And then,
That
but
would
then the
be-
chair still has discretion, correct?
That would be rare though, if people
Yeah.
are, that would be a chair issue then,
Yeah,
I mean, if they're saying no,
Well,
unexcused, so.
I do, there are times that are probably very legitimate work obligations. There's statistically, like for example, I know certain meetings in the, like, of the Tremont meeting, I have to be there.
So mandatory work obligations. So that would be the
Yeah.
difference. If it's discretionary work obligation, that's one thing, but if it's mandatory and your employer's saying you have to be here.
Work or, I guess, community obligations, right? Other community. That's it, too broad.
I think that,
I have a blog club meeting.
Well, obligations
Right.
covers that.
I remember that Delonte, in talking about this in a different context, I can't quite remember what it was, but it was in this room. And he commented on the fact that we need to attend these meetings because we're getting paid. That it's not, we're not volunteers where it's, elective whether we attend or not. But because we are being compensated, and I think this, some of these rules will apply or reflect that.
It doesn't seem like it's super important, but it is. Trust me when I say the community will, like you already saw, Ms. Rice asked, where's James Chura? So they've already noticed an absence. And the community, if there's one thing they pay attention to, it's this absence thing. Like they used to keep a tally of how many meetings commissioners have not attended and call them out and then call on other commissioners. What are you going to do about this? So it seems a little bit trivial, but it's not, because
Exactly.
your being here is important to the community. So there has to be a high standard for being in these seats when you're supposed to be there.
In those situations, do you just call it out or address what it is in that moment? Like, we don't need to notify the public, hey, I'm going on vacation, right? Like,
The notification is probably a public record, but you can just be simple and the chairs can do it with some grace and just say they're excused or they have an excused reason or they reached out to us ahead of time if the community were to make a point.
Just like you answered, just as you answered tonight about one of the commissioners. Yeah.
I do want to maybe know if some of us have regular meetings that are already scheduled, we have to maybe do a poll. We can't schedule things on those, so if you schedule something the third Monday, I'm the block club coach or I cannot be here, so that is something I think out of consideration to everybody. There might be meetings that you have that are regular and we can avoid, and hopefully we can get more accomplished during the meeting so we don't, so we can make them more efficient. Do we need to, is that just something that we'll have to do, Jason? We'll have to get everybody's schedules and avoid those days.
Can we go, I'm sorry, can we
yeah.
go back up really quick to the language of the chair. Okay, so here it says a reasonable effort should be made to give notice more than 72 hours in advance. The chair, co-chairs, or subcommittee chair will have the discretion classify absences as excused or unexcused. Excused absences and emergencies are defined as due to one or more of the following. And then maybe we just include one that's like, actually no. So the chair has the ability to use their discretion, but is it saying that anything that's not under that list, the chair cannot use their discretion?
We could put, but not limited to.
Yeah, like, yeah, let's add that. And then for chronic absenteeism, we clarified that that was for full commission meetings. And then did we put something in about the separate other, yeah.
Is that going to? But the, not limited to, is that going to get into the issue of constantly saying work was the issue?
Well, it's
Right.
still up to the chair.
Still up to the chair, okay.
Yeah. I think the chair could make a decision if you were constantly being like, oh, it's my work, it's my work. The chair could say, well, what is it then? You know, like, is that true?
I do have, before we go, when it triggers the removal process, is that voted upon by the entire commission?
Oh, yeah. That needs to be outlined.
Yeah, so the removal process is
In the charter?
outlined in the charter, so you would have to follow that process in 115.5. We could cut and paste it in here if we chose to, but hopefully you won't have to face this over an absenteeism, but
There's a lot, there are, we,
it's
Yeah.
complicated to remove someone.
mhm.
I think this is more of, hopefully this policy being restrictive will
Encourage
will encourage people to recognize that they need to be there or something could happen to them, but the removal process is a lengthy and challenging one, so
Okay.
it's not a guarantee that you'll be removed just because
I mean,
of
yeah, we
attendance.
should be designing this to encourage people to fully participate. So if it's worded in a way that is not wholly punitive, trying to think of ways to, because I'm also noticing there's a slight, not a contradiction, but like,
Yes,
you
yeah.
know, in the tardy policy.
We need
So-
to fix the excused notified issue here. So whether unnotified means,
Yes, notified
Unexcused?
or unexcused. So it could be notified but not excused. So it's 3. So if it's excused, it doesn't count as an absence, like in this policy?
That's
Doesn't say
Yeah, that's right. So there is no punitive for having
an excused absence.
excused absences in a row here. So right now, the way it is, but it did say here, I deleted because you were saying it wasn't, so I did, and then we got sidetracked. But there was
Oh.
3 excused absences in a row was here, but there
Oh, 3
was
notified absences.
3 notified, right? So it
So
said
3
notified.
3 unexcused absences. Is that what we want to say?
so excused absences don't count as absences?
They can. It says even excused absences can impact the word and may trigger the. It's obviously just a balance that we have
Right, so
to.
then we wouldn't just say 3 absences, we would say 3 unexcused
Unexcused
absences.
absences, right.
Yeah.
Instead of notified absences, because notified absences can also be excused or unexcused. That's what. So we need unexcused
yeah.
there.
And then the 2 unnotified, if it's unnotified, then it's unexcused because you didn't
Right.
tell anyone.
Jason, could you go back to the top? Do we need to have the subcommittee there? I mean, this is only, we're outlining this. I mean, I think we probably, I mean, there is a problem if someone is not attending their subcommittee, because we won't even one, we could 2, then we wouldn't have a.
Well, then you would
just.
just excuse them from the committee, right?
So does that need to be spelled out here?
Yeah, then maybe we say that the subcommittee follows the same process.
Yeah, but didn't we have, someone said a verbiage or something about the subcommittee chairs and what they,
Yeah, I think I mentioned it, but we didn't capture it
oh,
fully.
okay.
Yeah.
I had said, subcommittee chairs can use this policy as or this rule, use these rules as a guideline. If attendance,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, so we're not including them in the chronic
a
absentee.
subcommittee
Okay, yeah.
becomes an issue
A hindrance to the work of.
that hinders
Yeah.
the work of the committee, the committee chair, the subcommittee chair,
Mm.
chair shall bring it to the attention of the co-chairs for, so where does it go from there? If they bring it up, then they can apply these standards to them maybe, or
So then kick them off the entire commission or kick them off the
Probably
subcommittee?
Get them off of the subcommittee, I would
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
They-
yeah, for the
But then they
subcommittees,
would have to, we have to find a replacement.
Yep,
I mean,
mhm.
it will hinder the work a lot, because we're such a small group of 5.
yeah.
So we'll develop a plan to address.
for action.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
action. Okay.
That's good enough for now, I think, you
So
can always
Jason,
amend these.
Above, then you want to remove the subcommittee chairs because it's
I
going,
think I
oh, you did, okay.
Did, except for commission members with duty, because this is a broad statement, commission members have a
Okay.
duty to use
Yeah.
best efforts to attend all regularly scheduled CPC meetings and subcommittee meetings.
We're doing it.
Okay, so, so are we okay with those numbers, 2 and 3 and 1/4?
Mhm.
And these are, is it specified in 1.761, it's full commission? We just want to make sure, right?
Yeah, we added that it
Okay.
says related to full commission meetings.
Do we even need the final one? Because 1/4 of a 6-month period is 12 meetings?
Well, that's right now, it used to be once a month, and it
Right.
could change back to that in the future,
Okay,
so
yeah.
then it would
Okay,
be.
cool. Yeah,
you
that
know,
makes sense.
I think you just want to capture every
Just in
possible,
case, yeah.
Because it may not be consecutive, so when you're
Right.
saying in a row,
Right.
if you look at it holistically on the calendar, they could still have really bad attendance in that quarter,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But they could be coming to one, missing another, coming to one, missing another,
really,
so
yeah.
they could still have really bad attendance holistically.
Yeah.
We need to talk to a teacher about
Yeah.
this. We have John here for the attendance
Yeah.
policy, maybe.
For tardy, should we add a grace period?
There is a grace period. It says 75% or more of the scheduled meeting time. The last sentence on the next page. A commissioner is considered present at a meeting if they've attended 75 or more.
Right, but they're still tardy. What I'm asking is, should we have a grace period for tardy?
Oh, it's considered present.
That over here too, don't you, where it's a quarter? Oh, that's tardy.
Oh, I
the
see.
last
That's-
one. And it
So
could be-
present is different from timely here. Is that what?
Yeah, you have people who come in, every meeting at, halfway or at the end of the past, so it's,
It's 2 unnotified tardies in a row.
Yeah, so I was gonna suggest that we add a 5-minute or 10-minute grace period, maybe a
Gosh.
5-minute.
Possibly more,
Yeah.
with traffic. Depends on. 15? What is that? Is that too much?
For full commission meetings, that feels like it might be.
That's what they used to have in college, with 15 minutes and then leave it. Teacher didn't show up.
Okay, so it's unnotified tardies. Unnotified means the member did not contact 30. Okay, that's pretty gracious. Right? You have an emergency.
it doesn't say you can't be tardy, it's saying, you
And the
should
commissioners
notify, so there's a notification standard.
Yeah, it's a
Well,
notification tardy. So that doesn't count as a tardy against them then,
Or that's not.
right?
Well, until you get to 3 notified tardies in a row.
3
so-
notified tardies.
And you could broaden that out if you want. I think it just, in the old bylaws, it mirrored
But what
Yes.
constitutes tardiness?
Well, that's what I was writing here, because you
Oh.
got, so per these rules is, you could say not being present for roll call. That's a good one, because sometimes the meetings have a grace period already. We don't start them till 5 or 10 minutes in. So roll call would then be pushed back. So,
Are they given access to attend this way? Is that count as not being tardy?
well, that's usually a per request,
Per
like
request.
people have special circumstances. The problem with that in the past is if people know they can call in,
Yeah.
suddenly you'll have no one at your meeting. So if we make it a norm to have people call in, they'll take that liberty, unfortunately. So it should be only for, hey, I know I can't make it, but I do have the time to listen and participate.
I think that's fair because it's 3 notified tardies in a row. It's not like,
Yeah.
because if it's in a row, then it does suggest a pattern. If it's,
So do we want to say tardy is when you're not present for roll call? Is that
Yeah. It also gives, like, if you know that somebody is running 5 minutes late,
just,
you can just wait on roll call.
right, wait on roll call. Well,
I
but
like the roll call.
do we need to suggest, because we're not starting always on time either. Exactly.
right?
So I think a rule. Okay, roll call.
Call a roll, but later in attendance. So there.
And then I think the same question about whether this is specifically, do they stack up separately for subcommittees versus full committee? Sorry, full commission?
We can add that same language that we used up here to. Excuse me.
So once they're considered present, that doesn't count as an absent, right? That's, but they still might be considered tardy.
Right, but then they stack. So then if you have a certain number of tardies, it becomes an absence. Correct. Right?
No, the certain number of tardies. I don't know if does that seem equivalent to have absences have the same outcome as tardies, basically?
That's such a good point. Yeah. Oh, so maybe what we could do is,
Jason, what has been your experience with why this policy has been in place? As a person, like I'm speaking also for myself because I'm very optimistic about traffic.
Because grown-up professionals will take liberties just like my teenagers will. And they will become chronically tardy if you give them the liberty to just, have other commitments and then take this as not a responsibility.
And that's why the rules were made this way.
Right.
so I do think that it should be higher numbers to
Right.
trigger removal. Like it should not be the
it's
same.
the same.
So maybe it's like 4 or 6.
4 and 6. Does that seem?
Yeah.
It's in a row though.
Yeah.
And that's.
And then the other question becomes, who's
5.
making note of this?
Yeah, exactly. Who is keeping count?
So it's always in the official minutes. So, tardy, you'll be marked tardy in the minutes. So.
That's another reason, to the chair, that's another reason why we need to note the time a meeting starts. Not just call it to order, but call it to order as
time. Yeah.
That needs to be part of the
I forgot
minutes.
to do that. I was going
Same
to.
thing with
Right.
With adjournments. We should say when the meeting is being adjourned as well.
I mean, let's go back. I think 6 tardies in a row is a lot, though. Is that in a row? It's not like 6 total. I don't know. It come back to bite me. That's a lot, right? Because if you are just on time one time, then it wouldn't be. Is that too much?
6 in a row
But we're
sounds
talking
like a
about
lot.
triggering removal, right?
Yeah. So it may be fine.
So if you're late late 5 minutes 6 times in a row, you're gonna be removed. That might be a bit.
But at least it triggers the removal. It doesn't have to.
Right.
Oh, it triggers a vote.
It triggers, right.
No, but you said the removal process is.
The removal process involves a vote, so it's
Okay,
not like
alright.
you wouldn't have a chance to, and it's even more complicated than that. It has to,
But
they have to make a case to council for gross neglected duty, which would be really hard on tardies, but it just sets a, it sets a precedent, so.
How about, so I still think 6 in a row is a lot, but how about if somebody says, well, I know I'm going to be 15 minutes late because I have this other conflict, not because of traffic or whatever. Well, that's the other thing that we don't have is after, there probably should be circumstances listed for tardiness, traffic, accident, or do we, like, if someone knows I can only, tells beforehand, I'm going to be at the meeting at this time.
Should be,
But that might be providing too much latitude.
So,
I mean, you are talking about, you would need 4 unnotified tardies in a row.
I know. Or
And
unnotified. Yeah, that's a lot.
unnotified
what if
That's a
we
lot.
That
remove?
is a lot. And so that's
6 in a row is a lot too. I think in a row.
Yes.
Yes.
exactly. So I think that, I don't think we need to add circumstances.
So should we move it back to 2 and 3?
No, I think the 4 and 6.
We don't have to double we don't have to. Unnotified, 4 unnotified tardies in a row?
3
And
and
if you're talking
5.
5 minutes, you really gonna trigger someone's removal for being,
But it says unnotified.
right?
So what constitutes 30 minutes? So they don't know 30 minutes. Oh, I see. So they're just
I
always
mean,
late.
if you're gonna be 5 minutes late, I would say
Let's
do
go.
your due diligence and notify. Like
Yeah.
it's a courtesy. So you're talking about people who are not even taking a minute to send a text. So that's a different thing. Everyone has a phone these days. They can text most likely. So
that, yeah, so I think that if they notify, then it goes to the, if they notify, it goes to notify tardies. So that's just a issue of them being able to manage texting, but not getting here on time. So I think, maybe, yeah, those numbers I think are very gracious. So, and tardiness, and like, I do want to say, can we have, I know I would do that. If you said that you were 5 minutes late, I would just buy some time, but is that going to be done should that be a rule that we should be? No. Okay.
No.
and we could do the math on let me pull up the calculator here and see where 1/4
I'm just trying to.
falls
I'm
here with our
using that as
current.
a way to.
I was also wondering if a commissioner considered being present at a meeting if they have attended 75% or more, if we should also include that language under the absence policy.
Yeah, so we should, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that sentence where it says the 75% of a meeting. I was wondering if we should also include that in the section that talks about meeting attendance. Or maybe it's not needed. So it'd just be copying and pasting it and putting it under there.
Right. Okay.
Maybe it's not needed.
Oh, because it's absentee though, so they wouldn't be present anyways? Because they're already absent. Yeah, it's.
So you would never, yeah.
Yes, it's when they're not there.
Okay,
at all.
yeah, never mind. Cool. Sounds good.
So I would recommend now that we doing the math here, since this was just taken from the old bylaws, we eliminate this. It would only mean 3, if we have 2 meetings a month, times 6 months. This only when we math this out, 1/4 of the tardies would be only 3 meetings. So it's
More than.
less than the standards you already have set here. So I think you already have pretty good standards here. This may not be necessary in this context. So
Okay.
it made sense in the absence stuff, but not in.
And we're okay with 4 and 6. I'm thinking like, I mean, I as a person that has more, I guess I'm optimistic about traffic. Like I can understand this, but if it's a pattern,
I think that's
Yeah,
what-
I don't know why it's not tracking
that's what
changes
we
this
want
time, but
patterns,
um,
really, so.
I think 4 and 6 is pretty broad then
I
too.
was tracking changes yesterday. I'm still getting used to this online word.
In a row, yeah.
You just
I'll
gotta
just
get
make
the
a
one
note
meeting
to
over,
myself here to strike this.
and then restarts the clock.
So what is the policy can they call in if they notify you before? They have to notify you within 75 hours or 72 hours to use the call-in option.
Well, the call-in option, we can write that in here. It's not really in here because until I see what city council,
Yeah.
the exact rules say, and I don't think Delonte has given me a copy yet. When he does, we can add a call-in, but we can always go back and add that part in here about call-ins.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if they're not, say they're there for half the meeting, then it would be considered absent? Or less than?
If you're there for the
74%.
first half of the meeting, you know what I'm saying, and then you leave,
Mhm.
then you're
Or-
technically not tardy. But then
Are you absent?
you're absent.
Oh, that's a good point, is if you.
Or if you're just there for 74% of the meeting or anything below 75.
Right,
are you
because then
considered
you're not
absent?
captured. So that's why I was saying that excused, it might make sense to put.
Commissioners considered present at a meeting if they have attended 75% or more of the scheduled meeting time. Okay.
Because then you would be kind of to the same thing, right? Like if you were to be there but have to leave halfway through, that would be something you would need to notify the chairs, right, to get that excused in advance the same way that you would probably need. So, but
Maybe we can cross that bridge. Maybe something about other special circumstances left up to common sense and, So I have a question. So I sincerely did have, my battery just died and then it took, I had to go and find another battery. So what would that's why I was late and I texted an hour before. So what would that
would have been a notified tardy.
notify party?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that how we have it.
I think we have enough, yeah.
I mean, you'd have to do
That's
6
right.
of those in a row.
So 60-day non-participation rule, this was again from the old bylaws. If you're 60 days in no commission business, you cut the chairs, it's gonna be co-chairs now.
I was just gonna say, should we just strike this? Is it needed?
I think it's just a way to have a firm final,
Well, except if by the absent part policy.
Well, that's from meetings. This is a little different. I mean, you could,
This is for emails and any participation.
Right, but what I'm saying is if you don't participate, well, except, so a 60-day would be 4 meetings.
so let's say you had, 2 unnotified absences in a row. That's 30 days, technically the way we're set up right now. So you already hit chronic absenteeism.
Yeah.
And you had 3 unexcused in a row. So you're going off of absenteeism. I think non-participation, maybe would account for broader issues.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't hurt to keep it in there if there's something that falls oddly in the cracks here.
Okay.
You can strike it if you like.
Well, I mean, I think we want all of our commissioners to be engaged and not merely present at the meetings and participating. So.
Yeah, and participation is broader than
Then.
I mean, if you're showing up to meetings but you're not participating, it's a different, so you could be present and not participatory, right? So I think there's some flexibility there, but
The interest of it.
And then under extended maybe I'm jumping the gun.
So this just covers, when you're absent, you have a duty to cover what the ground you missed. It's kind of standard in there. So especially if you're absent like twice, right, then you got to really catch up. So you don't want to show up unprepared. And then extended absences and special circumstances, commission may grant leave of absence not to exceed 3 months. We've had a leave of absence in the past.
We
You
just
know,
need to say co-chairs under that one.
yeah, and I'm gonna, before we send this out, I'm gonna do a search to make sure that it's covered in.
An extended absence.
Extended absences are unpaid. How does that work?
Does it say that? No one has the power to stop, so the law is giving you a stipend.
Right,
That stipend's coming. It doesn't define participation as a requirement of that stipend or how many absences, so I don't think we have the power to stop someone from getting their stipend if they're on an extended absence. Nor do I think we would want to. I mean, what if they were in the hospital and they needed that money? So, you know,
Do we need to actually say that a vote to approve or deny is made? Because right now it just says that the chair makes a recommendation to the commission. It doesn't say that a vote happens. Maybe that's implied, but do we need to?
Well, is there a vote that's needed, or is it the
I-
chairs?
I think it depends on the circumstances. I mean, that would be we could make it a call for a vote to approve it. I think if someone goes through the time of asking for an extended absence, it's probably for a really good reason, and I highly doubt people are gonna vote against it. So,
Because right now it's not saying the chair has the ability to approve it. It's just saying they make a recommendation. So my question is, what happens after the
On
recommendation?
the future participation of the commissioner, not whether they get to. When they make, that's a little vague too.
yeah, it probably should be better defined here. It's
Because
I
you
think
would,
it should be the whole body that decides the future of that commissioner after they come back from their leave of absence, right?
yeah, but I also think you would probably want to know that before you take your leave of absence.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if you go on maternity leave, I would prefer for them to know whether or not they're going to be able to come back, not then be like, okay, you have a term of absence and then maybe you'll be let back on. You know what I'm saying? So I would just say the chair will make a recommendation to the commission who will then vote whether to approve the extended absence. Vote to approve.
well,
the
should we
extended
say here? I mean, so I think votes are complicated. I think we could give leeway here that during a term, commissioners are automatically granted at least one request for the 1 to 3 month absence, as a courtesy, if you did it that way. So each commissioner has the liberty to take the 1 to 3 month absence in a 4-year term, right? 4 years is a long time. I can anticipate that someone would probably need that liberty, and we don't want people voting and saying, oh no, So I think maybe as a liberty, you want to give
that.
each commissioner in a 4-year term the opportunity to take a 30 to 90 day leave without a vote.
I love that
But if they
idea.
try to take more than one, you
Yeah.
have to take that to the
I like
body.
that.
Just an idea. 4 years is a long time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's reasonable that someone in a 4-year period might say, I need a 90-day sabbatical.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to have a debate or a vote on that. I think people could just maybe have that one grace given to them in that period.
Yes. Here.
Mhm.
We're so close.
Okay.
It's almost as if it should read that the commissioner seeking an extended absence also shall submit a written notification, for the leave statement where or why. And then, because the future participation is only when that person comes back.
Yeah.
So if we were to put that one, to grant that once during a certain period, then that, anything above that would be, I think that would be a written notification, and anything above that would be a request. Because if we're gonna grant us one anyway, you almost don't need for it to be a request, but written notification. Are we almost there? One more page.
Should we make it, they have to make an advance request for that, so that way someone can't be like, oh, well, I wanna use my 90 days when they've been missing in action for, okay. So each commissioner during a 4-year term is automatically granted extended absence when requested to the co-chairs in advance. The request must include a start date and end date. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good idea.
All right, if the commissioner anticipates an extended physical absence from, should notify the co-chairs. I think that's kind of said in the first one. Can we eliminate that?
Yeah, I think you could delete that.
Well, you want to do the 1 to 3 months, maybe just say it again.
Oh, yeah. Say an extended absence of 1 to 3 months on the
That's
first
good.
bullet point. Oh, wait.
It's in the top, but if we probably better
Not to
to,
exceed 3 months. So commissioner during a 4-year term is automatically granted an extended absence. That's where we would put it then, right? 1 to 3 months.
so less than 1 month is not considered.
Right, that would just be absences like excused if you had a reason or.
Mhm.
So physical absence, that's weird now that I read it. So this is just, well, let's get rid of that too, because that just means meetings, right?
Yeah.
Like if you need your time off, that means no emails or nothing, right? So,
What if you're emotionally absent?
yeah.
Verbally absent for 2 to 3 months.
So, the commissioner seeking an additional extended, right? So now we're talking about.
Yeah.
The commissioner seeking an additional extended absence in a single term.
Yeah.
Shall submit a
Yep.
subsequent written request for leave of absence to the chair. The written request shall state the reason. So good. We don't need to give reasons for the first one. I think that's good.
Yeah, but we'll go for the second.
But the second then, the written request shall state the reasons for the request and expected date of return to active participation on the commission. And then the chair will then submit it for a vote. Request for a vote of the full commission. All right. Anything else there? Oh, you guys just gave yourself little vacations.
How soon can we use it?
Well, we have to make sure it's not all 13 at the same time.
Oh, that's a
Right, yeah,
good point.
yeah.
How many can be on absence at any given time? Great point.
The quorum rules wouldn't change, correct?
So if one, no, because the quorum is based on how many people show up to a meeting. So long as you're not under 7, you can't have a meeting if you're under 7. But if you only have 9, then you know, yeah, the majority, the vote to get that is the majority of how many people are there.
Okay.
So
But we could
I
never,
always
but
thought it was the full quorum. I always thought thought the quorum would be the number of the total commission.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Right, number of the total commission, correct. But if so we can't do business if we ever go under 7 commissioners.
Exactly.
Right, so as a whole commission, right, so,
Actually, you can do business, but you can't take a vote on it.
right, you can't take a vote,
Yeah, you can't
correct,
take a
right,
vote on it.
right.
I mean, the only thing I can see is like summer vacation or something, or vacation, you know? But I don't imagine that would be
What
Should
about
we
no more
leave
than
it?
3?
no more than
Oh,
Three would-
overlapping.
3 would be a lot, like,
Yeah,
I would probably say you probably don't want more than 1 at a time, I mean, well, 2,
two.
you know. If you have 3 people gone at one time, it's gonna make it really hard to do business as a whole, and then votes could become problematic because they could use
Oh, then
that
it's an
time
even
to
number.
pass things that normally wouldn't pass if you
Yeah.
had those 3 commissioners here,
Yeah.
so that's the other thing we have to be wary of.
Yeah.
So maybe only 1 at a time would be the most reasonable,
But what if
you
the
know.
one is like 3 months, then the other ones have to,
Yeah,
Actually, I mean, I don't think the math would work. If you have 13 people, I think we should make it 2, because if everybody were to take, if everyone were to be allowed to take a 3-month period over 4 years, that it would have to be like that. I think it should be 2. Sorry, I'm just gonna.
I mean, do we want to lessen the extended absence, 1 to 3 months?
No, I think
No?
it's good, because I think if people have kids, maternity leave, I think 3 months is important.
But it also, if it's
Or, sorry,
not,
family leave, yeah.
if it's not for family though, the 3 months is a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the way this reads, the chair will make a recommendation. So the recommendation could be at that time, you know, that one person or, a second person's request just came in. I make a recommendation that,
Right, but then some people would have to have their thing approved and other people wouldn't, because they could still be doing their first one.
Oh, I
this
see.
is a problem.
so let's start with the simplest problem up here. Should we just put this as granted on a first come, first served basis?
Okay.
Yes.
Cause that way there's no,
I'll never go on vacation.
yeah,
I go from always plan.
first come,
Yeah,
first.
like if I.
Is that the right wording, first come,
First
everyone
come,
understands?
First come, first serve, yeah. But they only get 1 per term, so
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
going
Yes.
to be.
And that's a term of either 2 years or 4 years.
Well, you guys are only gonna be, there's only people in this group that will ever have a 2-year class. From this point forward, it's always 4 years.
After this class.
After this class,
After
yes,
this
it's
class.
always, so there are only half of you that are on 2 years. So for every commissioner, it will be 4 years going forward, yes. So I guess this would still apply to the 2-year people. Would they need it? I don't know, you know.
and that's provided the 2-year people don't re-up. I mean,
Right.
it-
There's no rule on re-upping. You can.
Exactly, yeah, so there may be 2 years who would choose to go.
But then it would be a new term for them.
Yes.
So then they would restart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can make a note on here that,
Oh, I see what you're
the first class of 2 years is also eligible,
Yeah.
so.
I guess the only problem is if you're literally saying there's no overlap, so only 1 commissioner can be on.
Yeah.
Then that would be problematic for potential. The only time I see that is, people scheduling. right? If
That's why I
someone
think
overlaps,
2 is okay.
Yeah, 2 is probably, that gives the person,
Still an odd number for voting.
and this is still 1 to 3 months. This is not about, I'm just gone for a week or something, or I need to go to a little trip. This is an extended absence.
And it's 1 to 3 months, they may choose only 1 month,
Right.
so it may not be overlap
Right.
with the 1 month if somebody else is coming in the second or the third month.
I don't want someone to have an emergency and not be able to take a leave because 2 people are on a sabbatical. So, so that's the best
And this
wording
is
I can think of
totally
right now.
absent. This is like, you can still
Yeah.
if you right? They can still
You can still
call
do-
in if
Sure,
they're.
You can
absolutely.
still do excused absences,
Right.
you can
Right.
still, yeah.
There's no prohibition to doing some work while you're on these or attending a meeting. It's not like you just, it's, right. You're just not gonna be held accountable to the tardiness or the absence policy while you're on these leaves.
I only have one more thing for the rest of it.
I have one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, mine was, for method of voting. It says that show of hands is the preferred method. But we've actually said that roll call was our preferred method, so just, we want to change that to roll call voting.
The one comment I have is I would rather see the language that the commission will use Robert's Rules of Order to conduct business, not may use, because we need some structure to our meetings. So if we can change from may to will.
Yeah.
Or shall use.
I don't know why that a lot of places don't firmly commit to it because for some groups, they're overly cumbersome. So if you shall it, some people will take it to the limit.
Let's say will.
Yeah.
Will.
Yeah.
Because that has come back from the community, from our meeting last week, that the commissioners didn't know Robert's Rules of Order. And Delonte kept interrupting to correct us on different. We just need to learn.
We do a training. We should do a Robert's Rules of Order
To
training.
conduct business at, maybe we should define that since we have special, you don't want to use Robert's rules when you're doing one of those so at full commission and subcommittee meetings, we'll put that, right? So.
And I'm going to recommend this, so we don't have to put this in the minutes. I will recommend Robert's Rules for Dummies because it is just amazing how clear and succinct, the rules are, so.
Okay, great.
And it tells you the mistakes we make trying to implement Robert's Rules of Orders and the most important ones that we need to be aware of. So I would definitely recommend this to commission members. We won't put it in the minutes as for dummies, but
I think, like in circumstances like this, it's not a problem. With
Yeah.
13 of us, it really needs. I did have one question. So if, say you are like, one of our commissioners has a family emergency, they called in, that's still considered a fully present, right?
right now.
Right now.
Right now, yes.
Right now, so you don't want to put any language
That's up.
in that.
I would prefer to use the exact language that city council has put in their home rule legislation, which I do not have a copy of at this moment in time. As soon as I find it, we can insert that. But I don't know. I see some contradictions, and we can ask Delonte on when he does the training on Saturday, hopefully, or Wednesday, hopefully he'll bring it.
Or this could be when we meet to go over the second part of the manual, we could always make that change. One thing that we didn't get to that I realized is I would like to put where commissioners, if they need accommodations, how they make that request. Jason, would that go in the second part of the manual, do you think, or kind of feels like this would go here? But I wasn't sure, would they make that request to the executive director? That doesn't make sense because they technically oversee, maybe to the chair.
Yeah, we could put that. We could have a whole section on accommodations in the operations part, or we could put it up here. The chair doesn't necessarily have the means to grant that without the staff, so I think you would make your request to the executive director because they can, within the limits of what we have available, make an accommodation.
Is there, and you and I can chat offline about this, but so like, for example, I'm hard of hearing. I'm not using interpreters, but that's something that I've spent a lot of time using. And so who would make that call? I mean, technically the city would need to provide it. So then is it creating this kind of weird position for the executive director if I'm your boss, right? And then I'm also putting my request into you.
ultimately, we are a chartered city department, so, you know, if it was a request that I couldn't immediately meet, I would go have a conversation with the law department about it, and
Yeah.
then, you know, see what we could come up with.
Yeah.
And
I think
they also have, city policy has, all kinds of stuff on that too, related to,
Yeah.
you know, employee access and disabilities, so,
Right.
you know,
I'll do some reading on what the city puts in there and then just see if maybe, I mean, because we could even just put something that says refer to city.
or if you have some examples of bylaws, if you, that has that in there, cause it's law, right? So that's the thing. Law trumps bylaws.
Yeah.
So we don't have to say it in the bylaws, cause it
Right.
is the law.
Yeah.
So like if you were to come to the chair or to myself and say,
Right.
I need accommodations, well, the disabilities law covers that. It doesn't have
Right.
to be written in the bylaws, because there's a way higher law that governs that.
Right. But I think for me, it's less saying that this would then say like, oh, we have to provide it because it's in here. More is nice to have it laid out so that if you do have someone with a disability, they're not having to like figure it out on their own. Like you have a process laid out. So, but I think that can wait until I can draft up some stuff and work with Jason on it, and then we can just maybe look at adding that in when we get to the second part of the manual. I don't want to hold up the.
I have one last comment, a question. We had talked about this before, that we wanted to add something. I don't know whether it's appropriate here or whether it will be when we do the second part, that we would like to, that the bylaws need to be reviewed annually.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know.
There is a section in here,
Section here.
amendment in, the operating procedures and rules.
It doesn't have the annual.
It says the manual must be read and discussed as part of the agenda at a regular commission meeting, at least one regular, no, okay, so that's when we want to do an amendment. We could just add it in here.
Yeah,
Then.
just a statement saying that we will review the bylaws at least once annually. And that also will give us some leeway if comments are made about changes. If we know we're gonna do it once a month, we may not feel such an urgency
Yeah.
to address every comment that comes forward.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we have a draft. Congratulations,
Yay.
committee.
So, are we, yay, motion to congratulate ourselves. And
Also, thank you to
I'm sorry,
Jason
yeah,
for
make that-
staying
I can't
late
make
while
the
being
motion.
sick.
I'm not allowed to make that motion. All right, do we, is the plan now to submit, to show this to the next, when is our next meeting for, when do we?
So my recommendation would be, I will type this up as fast as I can. I want to, we'll send it to law for comments. I don't expect anything significant is going to come back. If it is something significant, we'll address it, but I don't expect anything significant. And then you can then send the draft forward to all commissioners prior to the next meeting and we'll do that summary sheet as you requested to let them know what to look for. And hopefully we can have that out by Friday, the summary sheet.
So we need to vote it out of committee.
Probably to be.
Okay, so are we moving, anyone want to make a motion to move this out of committee, the first set of rules?
I make a motion to move this out of committee to bring to the commission for a full vote.
Second.
Roll call vote or, Benito,
Aye.
Donaldson,
Aye.
Shidray?
Aye.
Okay, so I don't even need to vote, right? Wow, yes. And, what was the other thing? We do want to set another meeting for the second. I have a conflict next Monday. We have a meeting from 6 to 8. It's a holiday too. Oh, it's also a holiday. So
But I also don't think the second part of it is ready yet.
is it, will it be ready?
Well,
within
the
a week?
second, here's what I'll do in the interim too. If you have another meeting set, I'll get the second part out. I am going to redact the evidence you're hearing part and the part on Brady Giglio until we have training on that, but there are things that are important in there, like the media, stuff, the, budget, the administrative budget stuff. So it'll give you plenty of work to do while we work on, finalizing those very important yet going to be no doubt controversial parts of our job.
So do we want to meet on the Tuesday and have enough, do we want to be optimistic and have all of the package ready for Wednesday for approval, or do we have enough in this package to?
Yeah, I think we already have enough for the 22nd. So I think that we could just have our next meeting the following Monday.
The only reason you might want to set aside a very small time, in case you need it right before the meeting is if the law department came back with something, extremely consequential, then you can meet on the 21st right before and make a quick amendment and then re-vote it. That's the only thing I can think of why you would need to meet again before the 22nd.
Well, the training commission is meeting on the 21st too, I think. But
We have that on a calendar. Let me
When's
check.
our next, so Wednesday is the,
Wednesday's training,
it's not on my calendar, but,
following Wednesday is the full meeting.
right.
do you have
When is the,
21st?
do we have a budget meeting set? Do we set another budget meeting, Jason? No.
Budget is this coming Thursday. Let me pull up the calendar here. Just
My calendar is not, because I have the Outlook calendar that is not matching.
And that meeting is are the budget meetings always 5 to 7? I mean, are the committee meetings always 5 to 7?
let me pull it up here.
Right now, sounds like.
I was
So
thinking
we
about
have
the
ethics
budget
training
meeting.
on Wednesday. 15th. Budget is on Thursday.
There we go. Calendar.
It sounds like what we're saying is that
So-
we could have a potential, like a holding meeting that we don't necessarily have to use it unless we need to.
You can hold a spot on the 21st in case you need to make any last minute amendments to this before a vote on the 22nd. So the only reason I could see to do that is if the law department came back with a ton of feedback on it that you would need to just require. Probably what most they'll come back is maybe a word or two that is a controversial word or doesn't fit, but I think
And could we figure that out via email?
if we were gonna do the 21st, yeah, so long as we
No, I
noticed
mean
that.
that if it was just a word or two.
If you wanted to send it as a voted thing, you would have to quickly convene
Why
again.
don't we,
So,
if it's a word or two and it doesn't change the intent,
yeah, if it were me, I would just go forward and I don't think we're gonna get a lot of feedback from law. And even afterwards, you can meet and change it, again in a different committee. But most of the stuff was turnkey out of other bylaws that have already been approved and right out of 115. So I can't imagine what they would find in here that's controversial or.
So do we want to get ahead of everything with the next part?
So if you wanted to keep to Mondays, you could schedule one for the 27th, and then you would be introducing new business of Section 2, parts of Section 2.
I might have a conflict on that Monday too, but maybe we can. My question is, do we want to meet the week of the 20th to the 24th to continue making progress? Because it sounds like we have 2 more sections to do, right? The media, which might be.
Well, you have a whole other section, so I'll show you on the.
Right, well, and I think normally we're meeting every 2 weeks, so we wouldn't need to, I think it sounds like we need to have a hold for next week just in case. But then we could just continue with our next meeting as regularly scheduled sometime during that week,
so what
Of
would
the
the hold
27th.
be that Monday?
Tuesday.
Holiday?
Tuesday.
Okay, I was gonna say, cause I don't.
Yeah. So this is Section 2. There's a lot to it, so it's another 20 some pages. Goes up to page 50.
It's a lot.
Yeah, that you have expenditure and approval process, public speaking and media relations, receipt of citizen and officer-based complaints. You need a good solid procedure of how we handle that and what we do with our due process, flow of information, relationship management, dispute resolution. There's a lot in there. The part that I won't release yet until we get more training on it for review. I mean, it's available, but is conducting evidentiary hearings and Brady Giglio. Those things can wait until we're further ahead of the process. But this has come up already specifically, right? Public speaking has come up. Grant making is going to need to have some rules solidified around it. Expenditure process. So we have the budget process. We don't have expenditure process.
Chairperson, were you suggesting that we start meeting weekly until we get through it, or?
Well, I just want to get ahead of the other committees. If they, do we want to lose another week? The first, and my understanding is if we get this done, then we're not going to be meeting as regularly and except necessary. So our work will be, or do
We
we
can
need more
doodle
time?
poll it. I mean, it's always an option. I can put out a doodle tomorrow. We can
The
look
more
at
we
it.
spread this out, then we have to wait for them to approve it again, right? So it's going to be two more, it's going to set it up at least a month for the full
Yeah,
approval.
no,
of the
I was
mayor.
just clarifying that. I
Yeah,
wanted to make
no.
sure I understood what you're saying. So, I mean, I'm fine with moving it to weekly. I wasn't sure.
Just
Temporarily, right, yeah.
And I would want to, I wish that our meetings were better aligned with that. So it's basically now like every single week is spread out, to
Well,
give a break if we can have the meetings already.
And we
Similar
probably
weeks.
won't need to meet even bi-weekly once we get all
Right,
of this
no.
approved. So I'm fine with just saying, let's knock it out.
Yeah. What about the other subcommittee meetings? Are they?
Everything that's scheduled is right. You're looking at it right now. So we have budget and grants is on the 16th, and this is the training meeting. Is the mandatory training plus.
Right. What do we anticipate talking about in that budget meeting? Because we have a grant making aspect of on the 16th on Thursday. What are the topics? Probably for grant making or?
This is training, not rules.
For that budget meeting, what do you anticipate the topics are?
Here they're going to start talking about the grants. So
this is
that's my understanding. That the agenda's not set yet, but they're going to review what council said at the hearings and then move on to grant business, I think is the intent.
So is there anything that comes in conflict with our rules? Is there anything you anticipate that they are going to?
I mean, either
That we
way,
should
that's
provide
in
guidelines.
2 days. So
Right. I
we
know it's
have a
not-
meeting on Wednesday already. So I don't think there's.
They're going to
much
say
we
what
can
they
do.
want to do, and you guys can take what that is and make it into rules. I mean, I just have some ideas in the rules already, but
Okay.
so I think we can get it aligned. But again, the media stuff that's important. Other things you have work to do. So
Yeah.
just if you set a date, we'll find work. There's still work.
So right now, we have that hold on,
The 21st?
the 21st, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like maybe should we just have a meeting on the 21st?
Yeah, because we can always move forward with the
Right.
media.
But is that the same one as the training committee?
The 21st does not have a meeting, so
Okay.
there's nothing scheduled this week except our full one yet. The other committees haven't set future dates. They only have what's on this
Well,
week.
let's go ahead if that's all
So
right.
selfishly, no, never mind. That's
The
fine.
Tuesday, not the Monday,
The Tuesday.
but that Tuesday.
And I think that moving forward, we should, obviously this was a little different because we were trying to get this done, but maybe for future meetings, we can keep it to 2 hours.
Yeah, because if we meet more, I think we were losing attention and focus towards the end.
Yeah, my thoughts, the quality of my contribution.
Mine too, I start going down.
And the worst part
So
is
is five still good then? Do we want to keep it to 5?
Yes.
that's fine.
All right, so I will put it on the 21st here at
Anything. Okay.
Is that okay with you, Charles? I
Yep.
don't know what you
Yeah,
want.
before,
to say.
you're okay, you're nearby. Okay. So this, I think that we are done with our business.
Oh, we have to
Would we
adjourn.
like to adjourn? Or would we like to continue?
I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned at 8:37 PM.
I had
Thank
already
you,
packed
everyone,
Thank you all.
for visiting.
I'd also already.
As a future note for people that may still be listening, many of the papers that we're talking about are available if you attend in person, and we would definitely encourage the public's participation. Thank you so much.
Good job. We did it. We did it. All right. Woo.
There is a time delay on shutting this off, so you're still on broadcast at this moment, so just so you know.
But it wasn't visual. Was the visual coming? Oh, wow.
3 hours, 33 minutes, 50 seconds.
How many?
3 hours, 33 minutes, 50 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Is that all? Is that all?
That's a nice color. I was tired when I came here.
Two little sections.
Yeah.
I just think we need to keep moving.
No, I think it's fine. I mean, it's like, and we've seen the challenge of like,
Well, it's